I hereby call this meeting to order. I would like to announce for the record that Ms. Lebsack will be participating in this meeting via Zoom from a remote location due to just cause reason per California Government Code 54953 and SAUSD Board Bylaw 9320. Ms. Lebsack, are there persons over the age of 18 present in the room at your location? If yes, please state their relationship to you.
No.
Okay, thank you. At this time, the board has quorum of the members present in this conference room located within the district boundaries. Superintendent Perez, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be happy to do that. We can please stand. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to recognize that our district and school campuses are located in the village of Pasbenga. I want to acknowledge that this land we refer to as Orange County is the unceded and traditional lands of the Gabrielino Tongva Nation and the Juaneño Band of Mission Indians, a Hachiman Nation. These lands were taken through a process of colonization, physical and cultural genocide. I want to pay my respect to elders, both past and present, as well as the Tongva and Hachiman youth who have attended and are currently attending our schools and in neighboring districts. At this time, we will move on to public presentations. Ms. Quiros, do we have public presentations?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you to our community members, our staff, and our partners who are here with us tonight and tuning in as well. We appreciate your time and your engagement because strong public schools depend on strong public trust and a strong connection to the community we serve. Tonight's meeting is focused on board governance training and the work of our board governance team. And before I continue, I just want to check, Ms. Lebsack, I'm not sure if you're muted, but you might want to mute if you're not already muted. We're having a little bit of feedback. I don't know if it's from the Zoom. Okay, thank you. Let's try that. So again, tonight's meeting is focused on board governance training and the work of our board governance team. I want to briefly share why this matters and why we are dedicating time to it. This training is not a one-time event and it's not an afterthought. It reflects a commitment this board has been working toward, and it connects directly to the conversations we had when we hired our new superintendent. At that time, we weren't only selecting a superintendent, we were also recommitting to the kind of governance and leadership our district needs. A superintendent and governance team can only be successful when the board is aligned, focused, and disciplined in its role, and when we work together as a team. That's what tonight supports. And that's something that the team has been discussing for some time and looking forward to the meeting this evening. Governance trainings help us strengthen three things. First, it helps us clarify roles and expectations so the board and superintendent can each do their jobs effectively. Second, it helps us improve how we function as a governance team, including how we communicate, how we manage disagreement, and how we stay centered on students and results, which is another thing that this team is very much centered on. Third, it helps us fine-tune our practices so our board meetings are effective, respectful, and focused on the work that matters most, serving our students, stewarding resources responsibly, and responding to our community with integrity. Ultimately, tonight is one way we demonstrate our commitment to being a high-performing board and to serving this community at the highest level. We are grateful to have our consultant here to facilitate and her team for tonight's session, and we welcome their guidance as we continue strengthening our governance practices. So thank you again for being here. And with that, I'll turn it over to our facilitator, Terilyn Finders. Thank you.
Is that it? Yep. Okay, very good. We are delighted to be here with you. I'm Terrelyn Finders, and this is my colleague Sandy Lyon, a former superintendent and a former trustee myself. So we do not have a video, a presentation, a quiz, a test for you. We facilitate a discussion for this team around leadership themes, specifically the themes that are germane to the work you do as a board. And I think Sandy would like to, as we open with a tiny little icebreaker, tiny, so we can get to the work. And hello to Brenda. We see you there. I promised you that I would be really vigilant in my efforts to make sure you feel included in the conversation, though you are remote. Hello. I just want to say how wonderful it is that you're taking time to have this conversation together. Each of you has time alone with your superintendent when you're processing the agenda, or if you have questions of your superintendent. But unless you carve out this time, the 5 of you who are elected to serve with your superintendent, then and mindful of your objective of operational efficiency and effectiveness, proper use of resources, then your only employee as a board, your superintendent, might not be properly and operationally efficient for you if we're pulling her in 3 or 4 or 5 directions. And we can only make sure that we're all moving into the meetings with the same goals and agreements around how we will manage meetings if you have this conversation. You just, otherwise she's a 5-headed boss. And nobody wants that. Everyone has a right, as does Dr. Perez, to sit down with their boss and ask, how are we going to do this? What does this feel like? Right? And so thank you for taking the time to do that. And I will let Sandy introduce herself and then get us started. Sure. And we're going to dive right in.
So nice to be here, and hello, Board Member Lebsack. I'm sorry we haven't gotten to meet in person, but thank you for being here virtually. I know that's a little harder. It's nice to be in the room, but we really appreciate you being here. Longtime superintendent, and I was a 1 school district superintendent. I was in Santa Monica, Malibu, and I retired from Palm Springs, 13 years as superintendent. And in each of those districts, I was fortunate to have board members who committed to this kind of governance work. It's a best practice. I also serve on a nonprofit called One Future Coachella Valley, and we spend time as a nonprofit board at least 2 to 3 times a year working on how we operate as a board. And the only way that you get to do that as a body that is covered by the Brown Act is to have an agendized meeting and pull everybody together and really work through that. So we are very optimistic that you will find this time beneficial because it allows for a dialogue about how you work as a governance team that you just don't get to have anywhere else. And especially, I know what it was like to be a superintendent and have 5 or 7 conversations, as was the case in Santa Monica, Malibu, and try to knit that together, but to have you all in the space and be able to really come to some agreements about how you move forward as a team makes you the effective governance team that you want to be. So we're really grateful to get to facilitate that conversation. This is your conversation. We really are here as facilitators. Obviously, we've structured some things for that, but a friend of mine who does a lot of facilitation always says the agenda's there in case there's nothing else to talk about. And so in this case, if you go in a particular direction, you need some other stuff you want to talk about around any of these processes. We will let that, we won't stop you arbitrarily because it's time to move on. We want you to have the rich conversation that you need to and want to have. So we really do believe in putting our hearts and feet in the same place at the same time. So we have a very quick icebreaker, and it really is just, we'll do 2 quick things. One of the things we know about a team is we're people first, and then we're professionals always, no matter who we work with or for. And so I will ask you 2 very brief questions. One is, what are you looking forward to personally in the next few weeks? Something that's coming up that you're excited about. Could be a sporting event. It can be anything that's on your mind, maybe sleep. I know you are busy people. And then professionally, as you think about your role as superintendent, as a board member, what are you looking forward to within the organization that's coming up for you in the next week or few months? And so I will say for me, I'll model the the briefness that we have talked about. For me, what I'm looking forward to personally is I just got a new grandbaby, my first grandson, and so I'm looking forward to spending more time with him. And professionally, I get to, I'm working, coaching a couple of superintendents, and I get to spend some time with them in the next 2 weeks, and I'm looking forward to that. I'll
Very
turn it
good.
over to my colleague.
I too have a brand-new grandson. It's my third grandchild, and I have to say, grandkids are like ice cream. Eat it with a spoon. It's just the best. And so I know a colleague who's participating by Zoom feels the same way. Professionally, something I'm looking forward to, I've been invited into 2 county offices in Northern California to work with board presidents on helping them with just meeting management and themes and processing together. These can be very turbulent times. A couple of those boards are also, covered quite regularly by the media, the local media. They are a beat, as we say in the news industry, and so that's also a wrinkle. So I'm looking forward to that and hoping that goes well, and I will pass to you, sir, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Great, thank you. Personally, something I'm looking forward to, I have 7 nephews and nieces, and so majority of them are involved in different sports programs, and so definitely looking forward to taking some time to, make it out to some of their practices and games, and just being able to spend time with them. So I'm really looking forward to that over the next couple of weeks and months. Professionally, I think I'm just looking forward to working alongside our student board members. I know that was something that, as board members was a priority for us in centering student voice in these decision-making spaces. And so I'm personally looking forward and professionally looking forward to just being able to, ensure that we have that student representation and just working alongside them and hearing from them and their perspectives. So, I'll share that for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening again. Something personal. Well, you kind of caught me off with that one. I think sometimes we get so into the work, right? Like, I'll plan a vacation or something with family later, but that seems to keep coming up. So I think it's a good reminder to make space for that. Later this year, I have a trip planned to visit my sister and my mom. They live in Austin, so I'll be going out. We're trying to make it a new tradition for my sister's birthday. So it's really a great opportunity to see them and spend time together. And then professionally, I'm really excited. Yesterday, I got to go to a few of our sites and just have a chance to look at some of the data together and see what's happening on the campuses during some of the data chats and also the academic parent meetings that our FACE team and the sites are putting together. So I'm just really looking forward to continuing to go out and connect with our sites and see the work that they're doing around our district goals, and the momentum is very exciting each time we go out. So,
That's
yeah.
nice. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking forward to reconnecting with family friends. We grew up together. They were our neighbors across the street growing up. And they moved away, and we're actually planning a reunion at my mom's house in the next couple of weeks, just to see pictures their family grew. I'm like, who are all these people? So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be great. And then professionally, so many things, but really the partnerships with various community partners around our internships that we're working on. So a couple of really big instrumental meetings coming up over the next couple of weeks that I think will really be high leverage and high impact opportunities.
For me, I'm going to have to say CIF. Starting next week, we have different schools going to CIF. We have Santa Ana High School, Saddleback High School, Godinez, Segerstrom, Valley, not just in basketball, but also in wrestling, volleyball. So I'm looking forward to see their success. Professionally, I started doing research again. I'm a social worker by profession, so I started doing research. In 5 weeks, I'm going to be presenting my results. I'm doing started with literature review and family community engagement, and that's really exciting because I'm a social worker by profession. So that also ties into the field of social work. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I'm working on long term. Probably going to take me about a year by the time I finish with everything. But I'm looking forward to that and sharing that at different conferences and to anybody who needs help.
Yeah, exciting. Yeah, thank you.
First of all, thank you for being here today.
Yes.
Something personal.
You should know how grateful I am for that because I don't like to fly. And I had to fly. And I met your superintendent recently and I could not say no. So you're welcome.
Something personal is, I took some time this weekend to be with some friends, and we just scheduled an impromptu bike ride, so on the riverbed. So hopefully, it happens this weekend, and, I love being active whenever I can be. Like you said, we're all so busy, so every time I get a chance to just be active and also have fun and just get some rest outside of work is always a good time. And something professionally, I'm just starting my second year on this board, so I'm just looking forward to seeing us grow as a governance body and where it takes us in partnership with our community partners, our students now on our board, and just seeing how the data works alongside us and how we can improve that every day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And quick question before we turn to your board member. First names, last names, trustee, formality, what is your preference, Sandy? And I don't want to make a mistake here. Yep. Shall we?
How do folks feel with first name? Does that feel fine?
Okay, all right. We were comfortable with first names in a workshop I was in recently until we got to the fifth board member who scolded me, and I thought, okay, I'll never make that mistake again. So with that, I'll turn to Brenda, and we look forward to hearing from you personally and professionally.
Thank you. Well, personally, yes, I echo the grandchildren. I'm going to have our fourth grandchild coming up very soon. And so that's a lot of fun. And my husband and I just celebrated 40-year anniversary. So this summer we're hoping to reconnect with a lot of people by doing a road trip because, with life, longevity, you have chapters and seasons, and you easily can lose touch with certain people that meant a lot to you in the past. And so we're trying to reconnect with some of those relationships of various chapters of our life.
Nice.
Professionally, I think I'm very excited about Dr. Perez's very clear vision for our district as far as literacy. And it's just been refreshing, I think, in the entire district to make it clear what we want to do. Professionally also, I would say, because I do work with the faith communities throughout the state, and professionally in that area, I am trying to create videos and that can go to interfaith groups, letting them know about Mahmoud versus Taylor, because I find that the districts in the state of California are really slow pedaling that whole process as far as informing constituents. And so I say, hey, if it can't come from the districts, they need to get informed through the grassroots, through the congregations. So yeah, that would be a professional goal.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to launch right into the agenda, and thank you so much for those brief introductions. The objective here, and spoke with almost all of you, I think we tried to connect, sir, but really this meeting is for you. So I did hear from you through this conversation some of the things you'd like to clarify tonight, a process for setting the agenda, process for managing the agenda, roles and responsibilities, etc. So one of the things Sandy and I will do, and you'll observe this as we're hearing from you, and we're going to turn you toward each other. And the reason we're seated like this is it's your conversation. You don't need to please us. You need to come to agreements on how you're going to work together with your superintendent. But let's just begin briefly, very briefly, with the role of the board, which is not, according to Terrellin, it is stipulated in law. I'm not a lawyer, although I do work for a law firm, so I'm obligated to say that 3 times in every meeting because I like things in triplicate. And I have access to free pens, so woohoo. Anyway, yeah, neat. So I also have a prize at the end of the period. So anyway, the role of the board is really very clear, and the challenge for us is that it's not clear to the public. right? And if we're not clear on our role, we can kind of get pulled into this place of holding the day-to-day reins and doing what the public often thinks we're responsible for, which is running the district, your job. That's your job. Our job as a board is very clear. It's to set the direction and the priorities for the district. So one thing you're going to want to talk about here, even though those are clearly articulated for you at this time, you want to talk with your superintendent about the process you use to set the direction, to reaffirm the direction. Are you clear on that? Are you comfortable with the process? Not just the what, but the how that we do it. The second is we have only one employee. You know this. It is the superintendent, and we give direction to the superintendent and evaluate the superintendent. And we want to be clear on that process as well, because in a healthy organization, in a healthy classroom, an evaluation is never a surprise, right? It's not a surprise. So we want to talk about that process. We'll rely heavily on Sandy and Dr. Press.
And there's 5 of you that are doing it versus in typical supervisorial roles, there's one person evaluating another person. And so that makes it a layered event that needs to be really clear from the outset.
Right, and just, really frankly speaking, doing this up and down the state, sometimes an evaluation can turn into crisis du jour, even though there's been incredible progress, or maybe there has been Herculean work around an initiative like literacy, and you see tremendous work from the superintendent's office, but maybe less progress in the district than we wanted to see. We want to talk about measuring the leader's progress and work and the district's progress and work, because the space in between there might be where your leader wants to tell you we need to make some changes, right? So that's 2. 3 is policy, which articulates how the organization hires, the structure you put in place, the critical questions we have to ask to be legally compliant, the complex, often emotional conversations we need to have at the dais because maybe we don't all agree. And the voices that we are supposed, the voices, ooh, no, I was just trying to be funny. Apparently not working. But we are the public voice. So in those policy discussions, we should be bringing forward the voice of the community as we hear it. And there are 5 of you, because you don't all hear the same thing from the same people. And so our commitment tonight is going to be talking about that elastic mindset, listening to one another so that we broaden our lens and we do bring in the full voice of the public into that discussion. Accountability is a place where your superintendent's really eager to talk with you about what do our board agendas look like, what does the calendar look like, so that you can at a glance see when will we be getting reports on literacy, what do those look like, are we making progress? And that's where you go to the really healthy board place of, do you have the resources you need? Should we be looking at policies that might be impeding this work? And then 5th is the voice of the community. We are responsible for not only advocating in, bringing that voice in, but also advocating out, carrying out into the public the messages about the good work of the district and how people can engage. Because I can't be the only person sitting at this table whose parents didn't really know how to engage in my education. They assumed it was under control. They didn't. Neither of my parents went to college, and neither of my parents necessarily saw us going to college, but fortunately, high school counselors and teachers did, right? So they were nurturing it. So how do we engage families so that they know exactly where and how they can become involved? That's our job. That's it. The only other part of this that's sticky, and this is the most talking I'll do, you're welcome. The only other part of it that's really sticky is that only the board has authority. By law, only the board, and you're only a board when you're in a properly noticed meeting. And so we want to make sure we're using our meetings as effectively and efficiently as possible, and that's where we're going to really rely on the superintendent in tonight's conversation to drive this discussion around an accountability calendar, not creating it tonight, but what does it look like? What purpose does it serve? That's the board's job. Board members' responsibilities are to individual to us to do our homework. We're going to talk through all of this tonight, to come to meetings prepared, to commit to the best of our ability to let our superintendent know if there's something we know we need to discuss at that meeting, not to over-choreograph or to manipulate, to make sure that staff's informed of what we want to talk about so they can bring that information into the discussion. They want to move things along for you, but if we start throwing curveballs at them and they have to bring that information back to us at another meeting, we're protracting our timeline. So all these commitments around how we do our work, we're going to talk through that. And the superintendent's job, which requires a cape. It's a lot of work, wonderful job. And the superintendent is part of this team. So the governance team by law includes the superintendent, right? The board, the elected body, is the board, but the governance team is inclusive of your superintendent. So with that, we're going to start moving through some very specific questions that help you comb through your bylaws. So you have the 9,000s, right? And you're familiar with policy. Your policies are usually very broad, right? And it's the administrative regulations that accompany your policies that give more specificity in terms of how something is managed, your dress code, for example, or a cell phone policy, how it's managed, right? Your bylaws will benefit, I think, from a healthy conversation that will yield a handbook, your agreements around how you do this work. And that's what we commit to help you create following this discussion. And I think there are probably some things in your bylaws that are going to yield a very healthy conversation here for the group. First question, has this group, all 6 of you, been able to sit prior to tonight's meeting and discuss your bylaws and how your agreements around how you operationalize them? That has not in your 2 years on the board? No. So yes, no. And certainly, as the superintendent, you've not had opportunity to do this with them. So really, the good news is this is going to really be helpful to you as you move forward. So I'm just going to start asking questions, Sandy, and I think what we'll do is we'll use this as a guide.
Our template.
So we have worked with many districts to walk through their bylaws, excuse my lack of eye contact, and create a handbook, which is just very short. It's public friendly. It's purposefully in all necessary languages. It's really easy for people to understand. It carries your vision, mission, your values, the standard language, and directional commentary. And then it just moves into your agreements, your norms, how you work together. So I'm going to dive right in. And the first area is communication. Before we go here, quick question. Any clarifying questions on the role of the board? Anything that I shared that stood out, Dr. Prez, as like funky, not clear?
Sorry, I forgot. No, I think individually we have these conversations. You know, I've had the conversations with the board members individually, but when we get out here, we're like down to what's on the agenda. So we have not collectively been able to have that conversation around, you know, what is my role versus what is the board member's role.
Okay.
But yes, individually, I feel like, and as you were saying some of the things, I'm like, yeah, you know, I could see some heads nodding, and like, I know that we've talked about that individually.
Okay, thank you. Alfonso, did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I just wanted to stress the importance of what we're doing here today. You know, I've been on the board for 9 years, and one of the things that I've been reflecting on is the fact that we have new board members. They come in here, and nobody's there to tell them this is how you do things, or these are the expectations and stuff like that. And the reason that's important is because I've been having conversations with Dr. Perez about moving forward, the continuity of business, and we get a full new board next time, or 4 or 5 years from now. Making sure that they continue with all the progress that we've made. So it's not just this, but also with the governance work that we're doing and the focus on academics. And my Well, I guess I just wanted to stress that in order to ensure long-term success, we need to set the framework.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I remember as a new board member, and I'm going to be brief, going to my first board meeting, I'm elected, you know, I watched my, oh, thanks for the winds, by the way. I think it was the Santa Ana winds that was blowing my lawn signs all over the place. My daughter came home from school and said, Mom, please don't run for the board, your lawn signs are everywhere, it's so embarrassing. Okay, whatever, anyway, hoo-hoo, I won, and I go to my first meeting, and that's it. I mean, I got a packet in advance, I read it, I sat there, I didn't know how to turn on my microphone. So I think this notion of really talking about what onboarding means for new board members, what did we need, what can we offer for this sustained excellence, it is articulated in your bylaws that you would meet with them immediately after being elected and guide them through an orientation. So these are examples of the concrete points we're going to discuss. Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, and to my colleague's point, I also wanted to share, in thinking of the meeting tonight and in my conversations with the superintendent, this space is really, and also for our community, to be aware, this space is really for us to also be able to have those conversations that, because of Brown Act, a lot of times we can't hash out with more than one other person. So even thinking of best practices and how do we want to do things, as the superintendent mentioned, we're down to business, down to the agenda during our regular meetings. And so we don't usually have a space where we can think through all of that together. And also, I think this, can help also avoid misunderstandings too, because sometimes as a board member, I come with something, but I can't give the background of how I got there to more than one other board member, right? And I'm not necessarily going to do that during the middle of our regular agenda. So I think this is a great opportunity for that dialogue.
I think that it's such a huge point. And so when we work to get you to a governance handbook that you can use, a couple of things, I think it helps you illustrate quickly, this is how we do business, and to Alfonso's point, that you're memorializing the systems that you have in place, because you come in and it's drinking out of a fire hose. I mean, we've got acronym soup, it's tons of information, and we really, I think we do a better job of onboarding board members. I know during my tenure, that was something we really worked on. And you can only prepare so much runway. You really are flying the plane before you know it. And so if you don't give yourself opportunities to have this kind of dialogue about what's working and not working, the most important meetings you have are when you have your agendized board meeting and you're making the decisions that keep the district moving forward and running and make the decisions that are so important to the students in your district. Those are only effective and efficient if you have some systems and processes and agreements behind it. And so it's really, you're always going to have things that come up for you that take you off of those well-planned, board calendars that we're going to talk about. But if you don't have a board calendar, you're going to be just kind of swaying in the wind without this really clear objective of what are we doing as a board team. And so this piece here in particular with a handbook versus a bylaws. I'll ask board members, have you read the bylaws? Yes. What time should we end our meetings? I don't know. But it's in there. But it's not clear, right? And it's not easily readable and digestible. This becomes something that if I want to run for the board, I can look at your governance handbook and get an idea of what the operational piece looks like. Oh, you only have authority as a team. This is how you communicate. This is why I hear from the superintendent and not individual board members during a crisis. All of that would be spelled out here. So it's a really good tool for you to use.
I'm going to begin with this suggesting that we talk about meeting management, the meetings, because that's where you get your work done, right? And you're only a board when you're only the official body when you're in a meeting. So I'm just going to begin with a set of questions, and they may lead into more and more and more and more. What we're going to try to do is land on your agreements, and then I will get that back to you in the form of a draft document for an ad hoc committee to review, President, and then from the ad hoc committee, bring it to your full board for review. That's just a proposition, but let's start with the agenda. Your bylaws articulate how you can place something on the agenda, but I wonder if that's clear to everybody, and if you want to talk about the current practice you have for agenda, requesting an item to be placed on the agenda. Any thoughts? What is your current practice, Superintendent?
So the current practice is that a individual board member can email the board president and the superintendent when there is an item that is being requested to be placed on the agenda. When superintendent and board president are agenda setting, we're talking through that particular request. We have had instances where maybe it might not be possible for that next immediate meeting for time's sake or what have you, but the consideration for it to be on the following and next and upcoming agenda.
Okay, so is everyone clear that's the practice? You can email the superintendent, board president, request an item be placed on the agenda. You want to be mindful that that's a public records document. You also want to be mindful that you want to refrain from offering an opinion on something. You just want to simply state what you'd like to see on the agenda and why. For example, if you're in the middle of budget cuts, you don't necessarily want to ask how much does it cost to heat the pool because I intend to close that bad boy. That would be a bad email. But you could request, more broadly, what are the costs for athletics? So that is the current process you have. That is what's articulated in your bylaws. I wanted to have you discuss as a group this notion that your superintendent would get back to the requestor, maybe it's you, Valerie, right? And maybe suggest, I don't think this belongs on the agenda. Maybe I need to get the board some information on this item first, and that could come in our regular communication. But what we don't want to see the agenda as the only way to get information if the full board needs it. The superintendent might also say, do you mind if I hold that item until March, when you're going to get a full report on nutrition and it fits into that report. So there's a gas and clutch there that relies on trust of your superintendent to understand what you want and why, and how best to get that information to the board. Is there a need to discuss that at all with this group? Are you comfortable with your process? Are you, superintendent?
I am comfortable with the process. I do like the clarity around the readiness of the staff for that item to be on the agenda. We have had that, we've encountered that before, where a request may be made, but we are not prepared to do that. And I'm just gonna, right now, there's so many different legislative pieces that are moving through. And for us to take the time of the board and the community to share that without full understanding, an opportunity to work through, I don't think would be in the best interest. So I think having that agreement and understanding to know that we are going to do that in the time frame when we're best able to actually inform and advise the entire board.
Efficient and effective, right? You don't want to just bring it forward and
Right.
have a failed discussion. And so is everyone good with that? I just want to look for consensus. Okay.
Have we lost? Is she still there, Brenda, there?
I have a question.
Okay.
Oh,
Trying to think of how to get it. Yeah, I do have a question. I was reading through the bylaws about placing something on the agenda. And I noticed, and I do understand what Dr. Perez is saying, because that's happened. I have requested something on the agenda that's been kind of, not put on for a while now. So something I noticed in the bylaws is to say, to place something on the agenda to discuss why, or should it be placed on the agenda? And if not, if this isn't the time, let's make that public of why it's not the time. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know, and so, yeah, I'm probably gonna do that.
just a point of clarification. So you as a trustee you're saying that you would state, probably during staff board communication, you've requested an item to be placed on the agenda. You've been advised that it will be brought forward, but at a later time and for these reasons. Is that what you're saying, Brenda?
I feel like it was, and it's kind of, yeah, it was originally said, let's wait. And so I have been waiting, but it's still been It's been months now. So I don't know how long to wait. And so if we're going to continue to wait, then I think, you know, in reading the bylaws, it says, well, then place it on the agenda to discuss why we're waiting.
I believe what it says in the bylaws is that if the request is not honored, that a board member can ask for the request to be placed on the agenda for the board to discuss, do we want this item put on the agenda? And that is something you probably want
Right.
to check with Tony on, but
Yeah.
I believe that's the clarification. So if I
Correct.
request as a trustee, Dr. Perez, please place peanut butter and jelly on the agenda, and you say, you know, I'm just not going to do that, Carolyn, we've discussed it 4 times and I'm not going to, then I'll say, could I please, how can I place on the agenda for the full board to know that I'd like to talk about this, and we can decide, are we going to place it on the agenda? You might want to clarify that point with
Okay.
Tony, and
Yeah.
I'm making a note, your counsel,
Yes.
and I'm just making a note of that. We will follow up on that for you, for complete clarification. President,
Yes, so I was.
Madam President.
Thank you. So when I was reading that as well earlier, the way I understood it is if it's denied, the request, right, by the board president and superintendent, the board member may request the board take action during a board meeting to determine whether the item shall be placed on the agenda.
That is correct.
So to me, I understood that as during your board comments, you would be able to pose that, and in the past, we have done that as a board. During comments, you know, make an ask to the team, ask if there's consensus, and kind of gauge that, and then direct the superintendent to look further into something or come back with something. So that's where I think that's how I understood it.
Okay, I want to, that is correct, but I want to double check with your counsel, because what can happen here is if somebody brings something up, if Valerie brings something up, and there's no comment, then she can speak a little more aggressively to it, and now you're going to weigh in, and we are getting kind of close to a conversation about something that is actually not agendized. We're starting to actually actively lobby each other on a topic that's not been put before the board. So the healthiest practice is for you to email your superintendent and board president. If the superintendent says it doesn't belong on the agenda for these reasons and you're satisfied, she'll figure out how to get you the information. If she says, I need to give that to you when we give you a full policy update, which will be coming in March, that can be shared during staff board. Alfonso could say, I have requested an update on CIF policies, and for the record, I've been advised by superintendent it will be coming forward with a full. And that can be a way to signal to your community, I know you're interested in this conversation, and it will be happening. So I'm going to just comb through that really carefully, though, with Tony, because I don't want you to go sideways with the Brown Act. Are you good
Thank
with
you.
that,
Yes.
Superintendent? Okay, very good.
Question or comment,
Yeah,
if I may.
sure.
Because I know Caitlin mentioned to talk about it or request it during board comments, but we haven't had board comments for a while because our meetings have gone late. And that has actually prevented us from doing board comments. So that's not really, that's a hit or miss.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note of that, and when we get deeper into specific items on the agenda, we'll touch on staff board comments. So the agenda is organized by closed and open. Closed, I'm not gonna get into anything any more specific than you understand that's confidential. Are there any issues with confidentiality? It's confidential the rest of your life. I don't know if you know that. It is, all those items you discuss in there are confidential conversations for the elected body with staff and whoever is invited in, that's germane to the discussion, and it is confidential the rest of your life. Everyone good with that? I've only seen one board member ever get up and walk out, but anyway, closed is confidential, and then you come into open, and your agenda's organized, and there are many things to unpack here. So there's public comment, there's consent, there's public comment on both agenda and non-agenda items. There's the consent agenda. There are the items that are called to be opened by the board and then discussed. Staff reports are received, and there's staff board communication. So let's just tackle those, and this is the time to ask all your questions and really be thinking about, is the process you're using working for you? So let's just start with public comments. Public comments specifically on non-agenda items, items not on the agenda. Are you satisfied with how you're taking these? Do they take too long? Do you feel like you need to revisit where they are placed on the agenda? Thoughts?
So this is for public comment?
On non-agenda items, items not on the agenda.
So we don't actually have that split out on our agenda. It does not
You take them all at once.
all at once.
So you take both the items on your agenda and that's what you call public presentations?
Correct.
Okay, question to the group, is, do you think the word presentation
Invites more than a comment.
or kind of throws a person who's a newbie to the whole thing? Like, all I wanted to do was offer a comment on the libraries, but I don't have a presentation. I'm just asking you. Everyone's staring at me like I just landed here from another
It is
planet.
interesting language to me. I mean, having been in other districts, it is interesting language.
I've never
I will say it doesn't stop people, like the word presentation doesn't deter anybody. I don't think, I mean, maybe it does deter some, but we have a pretty robust public comment most nights, so.
Okay, all right. I have to say, I wasn't quite sure how the word translates. I'm often curious about how the word, we sometimes do that when we're with boards and we look at language and somebody will say, it doesn't translate clean. Thoughts? Or you just want to keep it? I don't want to belabor it if it's working for everybody. I noticed it. Okay.
I mean,
I have a
maybe,
comment.
go ahead, Ms. Lipsack.
Yes.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. My suggestion would be, because our board meetings do go late, sometimes we have like one agenda item or one particular topic that might have public comments last for 45 minutes or longer. And I mean, I know that other, and I believe this is in our, it might be in our bylaws, I don't know. But anyways, can't we, if it's gonna be on one subject, say that subject will be maximized at 20 minutes? Or
So-
something like that, or like those can be, I don't know if you have to take everybody down
Page 135.
1 minute
It is in your
or
bylaws.
2 minutes.
Your bylaws read, in general, individual speakers will be allowed, in general, 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item, and the board will limit total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. So if people showed up to talk about the fact that you closed the pool for refurbishing and it's interfering with their practice time, but that's not agendized, according to this, they'd get 3 minutes each and 20 minutes. By the way, the math doesn't work. It would be closer to 21 minutes, just saying. Basic computational skills. But that also for items on the agenda. So here are some things you'll want to discuss. This is a classic example of really working through the bylaws.
Right.
They're like swim lane lines. I think I said this to one of you when we were chatting. That's the lane, according to the law. You must hear from the public on items not on the agenda. There must be some time for it, and it doesn't say how much time, and it doesn't say where you take it. So let me speak to that for a minute. Some boards say 30 minutes for non-agenda items, and then if you want to stay and address us, if there are additional speakers, you can stay to the end of the meeting and address us at that time, but they move into their agenda. I'm not recommending anything. I'm sharing with you various practices. It can be exhausting to take an hour to an hour and a half of comments on items not even on your agenda, albeit important to the community, but not on your agenda, and you have to do your work. This is a business meeting of the board. You've got to get to work. So there's non-agenda that I do want you to discuss as a team with your superintendent, and then there are the agenda items, And some boards take those comments when that item is pulled, and they'll open the item. I was just with a board that said they wanted to hear those public comments before the staff report, because then the staff member can address them during their report. And that's your judgment call you can make that day. If you're the president, Valerie, President Magdaleno, you could say there are 5 speakers on this topic, and I'm going to suggest, Superintendent, we take their questions first and then hear the report. Or you can move that. All you want to do is run an efficient meeting. And then after you hear their comments, receive your report in whichever order, right? Then you close public comments. That's the courteous thing to do to the public. They think they're still in a PTA meeting where they can raise their hand and engage and get your attention. So you want to say, we are now closing public comments on this matter so the board can discuss and deliberate. By law, all you need to do, I don't mean all you need to do, but what you are obligated to do is hear from your public before you make a decision. And so this is a really good conversation for you to have and decide, are we doing it the way we want to do it? You can also say, if we have, and I believe that Brenda brought this up, if we have 10 speaker cards, 3 minutes each, if we have 11 to 20 speaker cards, 2 minutes each, 21 or more, 1 minute, and there are boards that articulate that, or they will say you can stay to the end of the meeting and address us at that time, but we need to move on. So you don't want to be figuring this out when the meeting is really packed and tense. That's not when you want to be doing it. So yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So,
Sure.
So this is actually something that the superintendent and I have been looking very closely at. And so I'm glad, it's coming up for discussion in this space so that we can maybe hash through it and see what the team, where folks feel. So I think the goal really is, well, before I start with the goal, I want to acknowledge our community is a very involved, very knowledgeable, very invested community, right, in what we're doing in our schools. And so I think for myself, and I'm sure some of my colleagues on the board as well, that's like a value area for us. I know many of us, myself, before being on the board, we would come and we would give public comment, right? Or we would be giving public comment and still do in other, before other boards or councils. And so being mindful and feeling the weight of not wanting to limit the voice of the community, but also being in this role of, as a board member and understanding like our role to do the board's business, to make sure we get through the district's business in a responsible and reasonable manner. So, and that being said, with our current board, with our superintendent, our entire district, our community has really wrapped around our goals. And so around our academic goals and focus. And so as we begin this year as a result of the board's advocacy, the superintendent's approach, we're going to have many more academic focused presentations throughout the year. And so that also begs this conversation of how do we be mindful of our time so that we're really spending the bulk of our time, one, getting through the business, but also a big piece of that is having the public presentation on academics. So I think, so a structure of maybe something that we've looked at and the team has put some time into coming up so we could present. We could share that, or we could share that. We can share that now if it's a good time to hash that out with the team. Put some models and some options together.
Yeah, and let me just say that I think everyone's tracking exactly what's going on here, right? One of the things you can do is suggest to speakers. I have 15 speaker cards here on items not on the agenda. We're going to take those in a moment. And then there's some clarifying comment for them, even though you have very engaged public. Always remember there might be someone there for whom it's very new, right? Meaning we don't respond, we can't engage, let's explain why. And then we have items on the agenda. I'm asking those who are here to speak on our mathematics work to wait till that agenda item is called so you can hear the presentation. However, if you, for some personal reason, really prefer to address us at the top of the meeting, you can take it then, right? So I have to get home, I don't have a babysitter for long, I got here, I want you to know how I feel, and I need to leave. But you also really do want to try to inform the community as well of your work, not just have them offer their opinion and then leave and not be informed by the report, which we've seen happen, a mass exodus, and you're like, rats, I wish they'd stayed and heard that. So you can, those are both, and I want to make sure that you have a healthy conversation, but if you're going to change a practice, that you want to discuss it up there at the dais. It will be something agendized later, and you would actually come to some agreement around this. But I'd like to open it up for the rest of the board to share their thoughts on public comments.
I can go ahead. I think I'm okay with the way we're doing it now, you know, whether it's an agendized item or not. I appreciate hearing our community members coming out and speaking at the top of our meeting, because regardless of what we're discussing, you know, sometimes they bring concerns that, you know, I tend to go to school site visits and sometimes I miss something. So they bring it to our attention, which is great. And then I can touch bases with our superintendent after our meeting and be like, hey, you know, what about that comment? Let's make sure we follow up, right? So when in regards to non-agenda items, I'm okay with all the speakers being included at the same time as those speaking when they're agendized.
So you're comfortable with it all being bundled
Yes,
at
the way we
top?
do it now. Yeah.
Okay, okay, very good. Alfonso, thank you. Alfonso?
Just a couple of thoughts. It's challenging because we have a really vocal community. You know, there's been days when we had 75 to 100 speakers. And I'm always hesitant about cutting their time because for me, it comes down to, it comes down to transparency. You know, they're taking the time to come out and wait to speak to us. I think that it's valuable because sometimes we hear things that we might not hear if they weren't here. But the other thing, I've also had conversations with Dr. Perez about systems, changing our systems, because the thing is, if someone comes in to complain about something, why wasn't it taken care of at the school site level? Why wasn't it taken care of before it comes to us? So that's part of the conversations that I've been having with Dr. Perez. How can we do it so that these issues get resolved at the lower level? I would still want to hear from them, and I get emails all the time and I forward them to Dr. Perez. But the whole thing is our systems. You know, customer service. It basically comes down to customer service, making sure that people feel that they're heard, that they're valued. You know, but in regards to the what we have now, I'm okay with it. I'm open to any other suggestions, but my biggest thing is just the transparency. You know, making sure that everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinions.
And accessibility, that's
Yes.
what I'm hearing. You want them to know you're accessible to them.
Sorry, one last comment that I missed, right? And when we're talking about time management of our meeting, I know, I just wanted to bring up that we can trust our president, that if needed, you know, under her discretion, she can lower the time as long as we make sure that we listen to everybody who submitted a card. And I know she's done that in the past, so just wanted to comment that.
Thank you. And if I can clarify, I know we haven't heard from everybody, but I just wanted to make sure we're all speaking like to the same thing. So I actually hadn't been looking at moving the order of the speakers. So I know that's kind of something, a new thought that you brought up, Terilyn. And when you were bringing that up, I also had my reflections on that because I'm thinking about people having to wait, right, and needing to get home. But there also sounds like there's some positives to it too. But it was more of like the time frame, and so we did create like a draft of like a timetable, and it was something more around the lines of like trying to keep our comments within a set time period. So if that's like an hour, hour and a half, and then we actually did the math. Someone did the math on the team, and used ChatGPT too a little bit to break that down until it felt like palatable and fair still, and honoring our community to like still give them the time to speak. So we can maybe pull up the numbers and share after everyone like has a chance to share their thoughts. But we could share the proposed time frame and what that breakdown would be. And the idea again for me was that we keep it within a certain time frame so that we're getting through the board's business and we have time to get to the academic presentations and things like that.
Okay, Hector?
So I would not be supportive of moving you know, where we hold our public comments.
You want to keep them where they are?
I would keep them where they are, unless there's a commitment from our board to be more efficient when talking about our consent items. Because what I've seen over the past couple of months is that a lot of our consent calendar items are being pulled, and we're having long discussions on these consent items, which are stopping us from having discussions on our regular agenda and talking about those items that we actually have people coming out to speak about. And so, again, to that point where we're finally having that discussion, by then the folks that came and gave public comment are long gone, right? And so, what I know is that, you know, if we were to move public comments to the place in the agenda where we're talking about the item, I'm worried that by the time we get there, those people are gone, right? Because they don't have childcare, because they had to go home and cook dinner or whatever. They had to do whatever they had to do, right? And so that's why I'm supportive of keeping it where it is, unless I think that there is a genuine and concerted effort by all of us to be more efficient in the way that we talk about our consent calendar. And I know that's a whole nother thing that, and probably another item that we can talk more about in detail.
Yeah.
But again, right, it's balancing, for me, as a previous board president, balancing the understanding that, like, we are, as a board, we're conducting the business of the district in public.
In public.
And it's not necessarily the public's meeting, right? It's the board's meeting that we're conducting in public. And so making sure that, you know, like, us as board members, we have an understanding of that, but the public also has an understanding of that. And that in no way we want folks to feel like we're limiting their time, because, you know, like my colleague brought up, I remember being on the other side and giving a public comment and my time being cut down to 1 minute. And it took me a lot longer than 1 minute to drive to City Hall, and a lot longer than 1 minute to drive back home, and then a lot longer to wait in line for my turn, right? And so how do we do that in a way where we can continue to be respectful and mindful and give people their opportunity to speak, but at the same time recognize that, you know, we do have business to conduct, and, you know, we want to get to those issues and talk about those issues and resolve those issues, but we can't do that if our meetings are running past like 11 p.m., 12 a.m., right? So that's where I'm at in terms of public comment and how we do that, right? And how we're able to be efficient in those ways.
Okay. And Brenda, we want to hear from you. And
Yeah.
we want to hear from you, Superintendent, as well, your thoughts. Because you're going to bring in the voice of staff as well, the day after a meeting.
That's right.
Where they're saying, you know, whatever they're saying. Brenda?
Yeah, I agree with Hector as far as keeping it at the beginning, because I do agree, you know, and I've been on the other side as well, where, you know, you can't wait till 10:30 at night. I think we need to give our community the respect of the beginning of the meeting to give us input. Now, I may not agree though on the minutes. I think that if it looks like we have a lot of speakers and it's going to take 2 hours or 2.5 hours worth of public comment time or whatever, I think it's reasonable, and I believe people understand it makes sense. That, okay, because of this, because we have so many cards, we're gonna take it down to 2 minutes. You can hear it in 2 minutes. And there a lot of times, and I do know, I've heard at other meetings where the president will say, you know, if you're hearing somebody else say what you were gonna say, then take that part out. So we don't hear double of, or triple, quadruple of the same message, you know? And I've heard that stated at other board meetings. I haven't heard it stated at ours, but so that's where I stand on that.
Okay.
That I think it's not disrespectful to take it from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. I think it would be hard to take it to 1 minute, but I mean, if we have like oodles amount, it would be reasonable. So we can't go to 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think.
So I'm going to hear from, thank you, we'll hear from the superintendent on this. There's consensus to leave it where it is, but there is an open discussion about the operational efficiency of your meeting. I do want to share with you, Superintendent and There are many strategies for helping the public understand several things here that I think aren't clear to us when we're sitting out there. And I was also sitting out there before I ran, and I was a reporter. I covered education. I sat in those meetings and watched how parents and community members misunderstood and didn't understand why you didn't answer their question and so forth. I want to speak to some best practices here and rely on you to help me. One thing you can do is say that there are 60 of you who want to address the board, and we want to hear from each of you. Please understand, we're going to move time to 2 minutes. You hear some grumbling, and you're like, with all due respect, you can make your point to the board in 2 minutes, but this is our way of making sure we hear from all of you. So just want to explain it. You can certainly do that. You can also say, and if somebody speaks and you agree with them, a show of hands, we see that. When everybody does this, you see it, and they will use that. You can also say, I want this meeting to be comfortable for everyone who chose to come here tonight and address us. There will be no cheering or jeering. And if there is disrespect, I was in a meeting where there were 100 people and the students stood up to speak about something. He was the only voice on a particular, he was basically saying, we don't need a second high school. What we need is for you to do this to our high school. Please stop talking about a second high school. And he was booed by a whole room of adults. And the board president shut them down so hard. She just said, this is not how we treat each other. This is he did not treat you that way. And he clearly is bringing a different point of view. So you do have a responsibility to model the type of meeting that you'd expect to see from your students as well. Third point I want to share with you is when somebody speaks on something that's not on your agenda and you can't address it, parents come forward with complaints or concerns, and we're wondering how that's being handled. And we've heard twice now, I'll talk to the superintendent, I'll talk to the superintendent. That's one-on-one, not all of you. I just remind you that you can say to the superintendent, I'm on non-agenda, so you can't talk about it, but you could say to the superintendent, could someone please speak with this parent and clarify for them where they should be bringing their voice so this can be attended to. You can do that. You can clarify. If someone says something that's 100% wrong, you can say, superintendent, for the record, would you please clarify the facts regarding? You don't have to let them leave and the entire room thinks, you know, you're moving your entire bus fleet to the front yard of, you know, Hector's house. Like, no, you're not. And so seriously, you can say, for the record, I can clarify we are moving the fleet, but but in front of Valerie's house. So those are really important things for you to remember as a board, and to agree that you would, you know, rely on your president. And it's hard to be the president and be in the meeting.
Yes.
So you could say, maybe turn to the president and say, President, could we please ask the superintendent to address that point for the record? So you're not engaging in conversation. If you're not employing those strategies, they are available to you.
Thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to share for the community. I know that over the years that I've been on the board, I have seen that, and I know myself. Often, I will ask the superintendent if someone can speak to the family, and typically she'll share someone already is, because I think that has become the expectation. And sometimes that's through like a message, right? We don't always stop the meeting and share it out.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought it up, because I think we've gotten to the point where we have the system down that just to kind of recalibrate as a board what that looks like. And I don't think it hurts either to stop for a moment and acknowledge it and ask for that support.
And it has been very much a process and expectation. And actually in that areas where all of our staff typically sit, and they know what the expectation is, that somebody is following, the family, the student, community member, and you'll see folks get up. Sometimes I know not everybody sees that because they're not privy, you know, and they're watching us online or whatever. But that is definitely a process and practice that we have. It's the expectation.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so just make sure that everyone's very comfortable with that. Valerie?
But I think
Are you going to get upset about the buses?
I think you mentioned, you know, stop during the meeting and make a point to clarify whatever it is, the buses being changed. so the whole community or everybody who's present can understand that we are following up with these items or these topics that come up, right? So I understand that we send a text, you know, we all five of us probably do, but I think for us, it would be
You send a text to where?
to our superintendent, like during public comment, if we hear something, someone's like, let's check it, right? I think it would be better for us as a board is if we address it, you know, pause the public comment, you know, don't interrupt the individual, but wait till they're done. And either the president or any one of us can address our superintendent and say if we can clarify it or if we can address that issue. Is that okay?
We'll triple check with Tony, but, DeMarco, but yes, you can say, Superintendent, for the record, would you please clarify X? And it was a neighbor of yours, district, they were moving transportation, and people kept coming to the meetings, and it had gone from 10 buses to 25 to 75, and more people were coming, and they weren't quite sure how to get around it. Their communication didn't seem to be working, their social media, their messages, et cetera. And it was with council that at the next board meeting when they spoke, the president said, for the record, could you please clarify the facts? So it's for the record, we're not doing this. And she said, I can confirm we are moving transportation for buses for our special needs students. We'll be moving to whatever, the public library lot. And they're like, oh, it just ended. So, you know, transparency and accessibility works both ways. They can come here and we want to be available to hear from them, but we also want to make sure that they have the facts. And so that can be done. You don't want to protract and prolong your meetings, but if there's some real inaccurate information, then now, if somebody says principals never get back to me, you don't want to start duking it out on something like that. You just want to say, Superintendent, thank you very much for joining, for sharing with the board tonight. You can also, anymore, you know, this is up to you. You can say, we appreciate your being here. You're here because you care and you're busy people, and we want you to know there are many ways to reach the board. You can email us and we read everything. And some boards are saying that, if it's true, if it's 100% true. Getting to a meeting can be a very painful process, said one mother who had to get a babysitter in order to do it. So I'm hearing consensus about keeping your comments where they are. Do you agree with that, Superintendent? You're comfortable?
Oh, yeah, I'm comfortable
And
with that.
I'm also hearing maybe a thought on time, that when appropriate, you'd say, we want to hear from everyone. We're going to ask you to address the board in 2 minutes, please. I heard that. Is there agreement that you want to explore that, or no? Yeah, I see nods. Okay, thank you, Brenda, for that. And that you do have the right to correct misinformation, but have your superintendent do it, is my best advice to you. Do not start doing that from the dais. Right? And if you want your superintendent to address a point, I hear texting from the dais. Do you want to comment on that?
Not my favorite. I mean, I really do think then, now she's inundated again with 5 directions from 5 different people. The best idea is really just to have somebody, or, you know, and it is fine for you to lean in and say, if I could clarify, Board President.
Yeah.
And just lean in and say, you know, we do have somebody meeting with that person. I know the board's concerned, and I want to assure you that we're taking care of that. So sometimes I would be the one to lean in and not have to let the board member take charge of that. But that way, you know, unless something is slipping through the cracks, it sounds like Lorraine has a system, staff have a system. And so just when you need to validate that, then do it. And Lorraine will also have the instinct to lean in and say, I know that people are concerned, we've heard about this a few times, I can assure you staff is whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing I just want to say about the meeting management piece, having been in a district where we had very late board meetings and we tried many different structures. And I know the challenge with balancing this input, but one of the things as boards to think about, having been staff for so many years, is you don't want to hear your meatiest presentation at 11:30. That's just a challenge because your staff now isn't, they've been sitting, they were ready at 8:30. And now at 11:30, they're struggling. They end up being briefer, you don't have the same rich conversation. And so this is always the balance. And so it's something also as you're putting the agenda together, sometimes we get sort of inured to the structure of an agenda. Your agenda has to be published, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same way every time. And you also have the opportunity to reorder things once you get up there. And so that's the other thing to think about. If you can read the room and see, okay, something's going on here, I recommend we, move item 2 up. There, so you have that flexibility, you just change it and have the agenda as changed, approved. The other,
Can I just add to that? I want to make sure that's really clear to everybody, because that can be very powerful. One of the things I'm hearing loud and clear from all of you is a deep respect for your community, and you want them to stay as involved, engaged, informed, right? It is okay, it's good practice in a meeting to say, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda. I have 15 speaker cards on mathematics, item 4B. I'm going to ask for the agenda to be approved, moving that up to the top of the agenda. Motion, second, and it's approved, and say, and I'd welcome everyone who's here to address this at the top of the meeting, or when that item is called, immediately before it's called, so we hear your comments in connection to the presentation. We hope you'll stay for the presentation. You don't have to, but I appreciated when someone said, I see you there, Terrell-Lynn, and I know you care about this program. We're going to be discussing it. Please stay for the presentation. That is your privilege in terms of meeting management and also community engagement.
Yep.
So I want to make sure
That can
you
be
know
very-
that you can do that. That's about reading the room, and that might be Hector saying to the board president, there are 50 people here who want to hear about X, Y, and Z.
that's right.
Honor that. So you can absolutely do that. So do you have any questions on this, Superintendent? Is it working for you and staff?
Yes, it could work for, for all of us, and including staff. And the thing that I know about this board is they see our staff, and they know that our staff, and they've commented to me again individually about, oh my gosh, I know staff was, around, we didn't get to the presentation until 10:30, which is when we were supposed to actually be adjourning. And yes, we're tired and people are not able to engage, and it's the most important topic. It's, it's our academic presentations, and the place where we want our board to lean in, and ask the, tough questions and the things that are on their mind. So it is why we have been talking so much about better agenda setting. Really looking at having, one meeting a month dedicated to, the academic pieces and how do we structure so that we're able to do that. And this board has really been supportive and advocating for that. So it can, what we discussed, having public comment up front, the potential for looking at some times, which that then with board president, we can communicate, with folks. It can work. It can. I feel comfortable about that. Everything that you guys talked about with being more mindful around our consent items and, all of those things will allow for us to keep the main thing, like I've said to each of you.
So can we talk about consent? It sounds like there's some questions around consent. The purpose of consent is to move forward business that's standard operating business, contracts with food service, et cetera, efficiently and effectively. Is there something going on with consent where you feel like you're not moving through it as efficiently as you should? Something we need to discuss?
I will share, and I see Brenda has her hand as well.
Okay.
And this is just me keeping track of time. We actually often spend more time on consent than we do on action.
Okay. Okay, so Brenda, your hand?
Yeah. Okay, I've been a board member here in SAUSD for a year, so maybe I went a little overboard in the consent items in the beginning because I'm trying to figure some things out and, learn some of the things that we have going on in our district. Even though, I was an employee in our district, a teacher for 10 years before becoming a board member. And yet there were many things on there that I wasn't aware of. And so I wanted to bring those things to the community. And I figured if I have a question about it and I was an employee here, then surely they would too. And the other thing is, and I respect what Hector's saying, and I can definitely take that down, and reduce, the consent items. But I want to say the reason that I am doing that on some of the things is with community schools and, all the no-cost partnerships and the many cost partnerships that our school district has. I think parents and, they deserve to know who has access to their children and who these partnerships are. Because, the reason I'm doing this is because, before I came on the board, the consent just rolled. It rolled and people like, we never even knew those things. I'm like, yeah, I didn't either. And so I've had so many people thanking me, telling me, thank you for asking those questions because I had no idea. I'm like, I'm asking those questions because I'm learning too. And they're learning with me. And so the people in my community, as far as who, and I know it's a pain in the rear end, because I know we do need to get to some things, but I think some things, there's been a lot, we've made some really big assumptions with our community and saying, wow, we're just gonna bring in all these partnerships, and yet the parents don't know who they are. They don't even
So-
know who has access to their kids.
Well, let's
They
toggle to
deserve
this.
to know that.
Let's toggle to this as a question. If you're seeing a theme, Hector, Valerie, Alfonso, anybody seeing a theme in the consent agenda, and you think, I think these need to be plucked out and treated separately. There's a theme I see here I'll pick anything, non-public agency contracts for children with special needs. I'm seeing them over and over and over again. I would like to see that as a separate item so we can discuss philosophically how we feel about this. Do we have any policy obligations, whatever. I think rather than with due respect to, and with respect for what you're trying to do here, Brenda, as a trustee, which does also, it's another brand of access and transparency. Could you look to that and say, Superintendent, I need some time with you. I see a trend here in consent, and I don't want to burden the meeting with too many questions. And she might say, you know what, I need to pluck A, B, and C out, bundle them, bring them to you as a separate standalone item. Is any of this making sense, Sandy, as a superintendent? And that's what I would look for rather than, I think if your practice is pulling things from the consent, we have an issue we need to get to. Because you really do want consent to be your standard contracts, things where you don't have any questions about it beyond anything that you've been able to address one-on-one or for the group. And so that you can get into the meat of what all 5 of you are talking about as 6 with your superintendent, and that's kiddos and learning, and that's 3rd grade literacy. Because, right, and you need time, and staff needs to know that you've dedicated intellectual property in these meetings to that work, or else it's just, we've said it's a priority, but we don't even come in here, we keep talking about SpaghettiOs. So, remember those? I don't know. My grandson likes them. So, thank you. I just give them mild laughter here. So, I would say as a practice, you want to be listening, superintendent, for themes that are coming up. Turn to that board member and say, is there something we need to discuss, something here you feel you need to aerate, and how can I help you do that so we can be more efficient? Because I also hear in Brenda that we all have a learning curve, right? And we think if we're not asking all those questions, we're not being true to our obligation. We really do feel like we're short shrifting the community, but we need help from you in finding another way. And I think I'm hearing your board, I don't see any opposition to that notion. And also, is there consensus? You do, Hector expressed, I'd like to move through consent faster and get to the agenda. Is that a consensus of the board? Yeah, including, I think Brenda said, yeah, we want to get to the literacy. So questions on that, Superintendent? We can memorialize that theme.
Yeah, I like that concept of like the theme. I did make a note of that because I think even when I think back to some of the items that's come up with in the past, there is a theme.
I can clearly, even identify some themes. And so, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, and I've experienced it, change orders, right? When you're going through large construction projects and we put change orders on, there's a
Yes.
million of them. And board
Yes.
members will, I want to pull, I don't know why we're doing that. Why do we have that change order? Why
Yeah.
wasn't that built into the original cost? And so during some of those times, we would pull the change orders and facilities would get up and say, just want to call out these. So there's that dialogue and understanding. Because sometimes those things people feel like, and I hear what Brenda's saying, the board's not aware.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case.
Or they're-
Because
or
you
they're
all
s-
know
or
what's
they're
on
s-
the
they're sliding
consent
it past
agenda.
us. They're sliding it right
And
past
so
us.
it is,
Right.
it is strategic, and you are thinking about how do we make this transparent for the board. But I go back to the idea of how you order your agenda as well. And so, there are times where people would put consent at the end because there were gonna be things that were pulled, and it wasn't always something that could be managed. And so we get into a habit, consent agenda is F, or
Yeah.
whatever, however you, number them. And
Yeah.
so we always put it there, but really elevating up and saying, this is a big ticket item. We're gonna have a lot of people here who are gonna wanna ring in, love for them to stay to the item. How do we make sure that it's a higher priority on the agenda? And so there are many ways to slice that, but I do think we get habituated into what the agenda looks like and where things fall
Yeah,
in
you
it.
inherit it.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Can I just quickly add something?
I wish you would, but quickly.
Yes, quickly.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just ribbing you.
So I agree with all of that, and I also do have members of the community, parents, families who reach out and have questions about consent calendar items. For me, what has worked is actually hearing that and encouraging folks to reach out to me if those concerns happen, but addressing those concerns during my agenda review with the superintendent ahead of our public meeting, and being able to ask those questions, gain clarity, and then as a board member, do my responsibility, then communicate back with those individuals who, maybe brought those concerns. If enough people reach out and they're, definitely I will pull the agenda, the consent calendar item, right? Because at this point, there's more than just one family reaching out, having concerns and questions about this. And so it's important, again, to address it, I think. But again, it's not something that I'm taking an incredible amount of time doing, but it's just to ask the question, address it, and then move on, right? And so at least that's the way that I go about addressing like consent calendar items. And yes, I definitely respect what Brenda brought up, Ms. Lepsak brought up about members of the community having questions. And of course, like, people will have questions, people will have concerns. But that's just the way that I, as an individual board member, go about addressing that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? So we've moved through how you place an item on the agenda, the agenda itself. Oh, she has her hand up. We can't see her. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
That's okay. Okay, a couple things. Hector, thank you for, bringing that up. It is kind of challenging so we get to usually do our agenda review on Thursday, and then our board meeting's on Tuesday. And there's a lot in that consent. It's just jam-packed with things. Now, for you, maybe it's all just regular stuff. But I see a lot of new things that I've never seen before. And so I do my own research, and it takes me a lot of time, to be honest. I probably prepare for these meetings. I don't know. I probably spend 12 hours at least preparing for meetings. And I can't get to everything. I don't have all my questions ready, that fast. It takes me time. I literally take my weekend and put that as time aside to go through this agenda, and every consent item to look at it. So anyways, I wish I could and I will try, Hector, I will try to do that, okay? I promise you I will. The other thing is, though, I do want to give you some context in my own person of who I am, and my experience is that when I was a board member in Orange Unified, something was put on the consent calendar, the Chalk Hospital, and it said it was a no-cost item for a partnership to service mental health. And I'm like, how can this be no cost? So, I did digging and I actually talked to Chalk Hospital. I talked to the social workers. Found out they had a gender clinic, a pediatric gender clinic. At that time, nobody knew they had a gender clinic. And they wanted to partner with and I was a CTA, I knew the things that they were pushing through the CTA with many genders. And so it concerned me. So I told the superintendent, well, I'm going to bring this up, that they have a pediatric gender clinic, And then anyways, she ended up taking it off the agenda. But what I'm saying is I felt that was a betrayal of trust, and it was stuck in the consent agenda. Now, I will tell you, as of February 6th, Chalk has closed their pediatric gender clinic, okay? So they don't do the puberty blockers and the hormone therapy anymore. But I started opening that up and telling the community, hey, everybody, do you know Chalk has a gender clinic? Because they're now partnering with our schools.
Brenda, I'm just going to suggest that there's a theme coming out here that is of importance to you as a person and probably to the people who elected you. It is a voice that you're advocating for, and it's a position that you're making clear. I would speak with your superintendent about these themes, and that if there are going to be items on the agenda that touch on these themes, how can we address them as transparently and efficiently as possible so that you don't feel you have to do 12 hours of triple checking on work that your staff should be doing for you, and you don't need to burden the meeting that you yourself really want to dedicate to literacy and English learner reclassification, and very, very much as you said, if our graduation rate is high, we want our literacy rates equally high. And so I would say there's a theme there you want to discuss with your superintendent, and I'm going to bare my soul to you here. I asked many, many questions about children with special needs when I was on the board until finally staff said, you know what? We've got to pull these and bundle them and address them differently because Trustee Finders is going to be all over this topic, and it really expedited things. All I wanted to know was that field trips and overnight trips and extracurricular activities were factored for children with special needs. I wanted to know when we adopted curriculum and books that somebody was keeping an eye out for children with special needs. And if I didn't want to have to go through your agenda and pluck everything out, thinking you were hiding that from me. And so I think that's an important theme for you to be aware of, Lorraine, so that you can really help this team manage meetings and not use consent, not get lost in consent. Right. And so we're not going to move the order of anything with the meetings right now. You did agree that you might look at 2 minutes. You did agree that you would possibly let speakers know if you want to stay for the report. We'd love for you to hear it. You're interested in that meeting, in that topic. And that if we can get our meetings down to a more efficient time, that you can address the staff board communication, which is as the best practice, held to 2 minutes per person, and it's really not focused on where you've been so much, but work you're doing in connection to the goals of the organization. Schools you visited, how pleased you were to see the reading program in progress. During staff board communication, you want to stay away from evaluative comments. You don't want to say, it was really great to watch Valerie Magdaleno in her class. She's the best math teacher I've ever seen, even if you are. You want to stay, your lawyer will tell you, away from evaluative commentary up there. So, and that is your agenda. And it sounds like you're going to be trying to focus one meeting a month very aggressively on the academics. And so I see your hand, sir, which is wonderful. Your hand, sir.
So we're talking about the agenda, we're talking about policies, we're talking about the way that we're going to be conducting ourselves. So just real quick, a question for clarification. As a board member, if I see an item on the agenda, can I call the hospital? Can I call the university? Can I call the service provider and say, hey, you know what, I have a concern regarding this item. Can I call them directly?
I'm going to let you take that one, Superintendent.
Sure. So that is what we are here to do. If there are questions, and I've expressed this to each of you, please allow us to answer your question.
Is it codified in a policy?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Should be.
Thank you.
Yeah. So but those are questions that if you have questions around, as I did with special education, vendor contracts we were approving, I addressed them to staff, and then staff provided that information to me. and that was in our policy. Do you see it?
No, but I was just gonna say, I mean, it's
I
such a
don't see it
great.
in the bylaws.
No, I think the challenge is, did you find it?
It is here. I'm
Board
gonna
member?
look.
Okay.
Okay. I think one of the challenges is, as a superintendent, I could not tell my board, don't do that, don't call that person. Right? It puts us in a precarious position. The reality is, though, that our board doesn't look effective and efficient in the community, and that's one of our challenges, is you also are representing this organization and how you do business. And so, you know that if you go to Dr. Perez and say, hey, I need more information, can you get whatever, you're gonna get that request fulfilled. So she should be the funnel for all those questions and all that information, and then you operate. The challenge is, and you all know this as well, and having been a longtime superintendent, board members that would call principals and directors and gather a lot of information individually. But now my job is to make sure you all have the same information.
Yeah.
And that becomes very challenging if you're not all operating from that same foundational place. And so how can I, as a superintendent, help you all have the same information? The best way is for me to know, some of you have burning questions, I'm gonna get those answered, and I'm gonna disseminate that, so you're all starting from the same place.
I don't want to lose that as a best practice for you, and we want to hear from the superintendent where you found this in policy. When you're meeting one-on-one with the superintendent to move through the agenda and asking your questions, and perhaps that's a place where you say, I have a deep sensitivity to the fact that I feel these students are being marginalized, and I'm looking at that closely as I review the agenda. She wants to hear that from you and know that, but she isn't going to exclusively provide you, Valerie, information on that. She knows that's something she needs to get to her full board. Sometimes there are just questions like, I don't know how to read this chart, like, could you, and there were so many charts where I'm like, could you just give me a quick tutorial on how to read it?
Yeah.
Shouldn't necessarily need to give that to everybody. But when I'm saying I'm really uncomfortable with how we're processing these internships, and I don't know how we're vetting X, Y, and Z, she's gonna think, good question, Alfonso, you know what, I need to get that to the full board. Or maybe that's a policy conversation. And that's where you also build trust, that she knows you're not up there ripping the rug out from underneath her while she's trying to build trust in the organization. You're letting her know, I'm gonna be ripping the rug out on this one. I really need you to go there with me. So what did you find there, Dr. Perez? You are on your Easter egg hunt down there.
I am. I actually saw it earlier, and
Okay. Well, I'll keep
I'm gonna
looking as well.
search.
We'll keep looking.
Yeah.
So,
In the meantime, I wanted to just add to that as well. I think that's a really good point, because I've experienced it where I've had partners comment to me, like, what's going on? Because maybe they have received questions from different people. And so it can also create like a sense of there isn't clear direction
That's right.
or organization amongst our governance team. And so I'm glad this came up. I wasn't thinking about that as a topic for today, but I'm glad that we're able to like think through that as a team, that how we operate as an individual impacts the work of the district and the team, and it can show a lack of confidence in the team too, right? If and also can come off sometimes as someone is speaking on behalf of the district as one individual.
Absolutely.
absolutely. And if we've set clear direction for the superintendent that, I'm going to stay with literacy, which is something you've been discussing as a group, and your materials are showing a really assertive focus in that. She is going to be most effective with this organization, with your cabinet and with your site leaders, which is where it's happening, right? It's happening at the sites, right? Either they're going to move the needle on this. This is who taught me this. Seriously, if she knows that this board has given her clear direction and isn't on some level, it's okay to ask your questions. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to listen, but be mindful. This is where it's board member commitment. Be mindful that you're either communicating, I have faith in staff, or I don't. And when we sense that they don't have faith in leadership, I'll tell you what they do. They close the door and they say, I will survive this administration. I will just survive another administration. And we don't want that. We need sites to know you've set the direction. She knows the direction she's moving forward. Ask your questions. And if every single person here present, including Brenda virtually present, If there's a theme that's bothering you as a trustee and you have your eye on it, you need to let Lorraine know that. And she will decide, do I bring this to the full board? Do I just stay mindful? Carolyn's really watching special ed closely, and so I need to treat it carefully for the full board. She can't have 5 bosses, but she does need to know what you're watching so she can be attentive to that. A good superintendent, and you have one, knows that while only the body sets direction, and that's true, only the body sets direction, all of your points of view, all of your lenses, and who you're hearing from out there come into her like the ingredients for a good salad, right? She needs to hear that. So, Lorraine, I hope you're empowered now to just really, bring that up
Yeah,
in your one-on-ones, and I'm making note of it for you.
thank you. So 9,200, unless agreed to by the board as a whole, individual members of the board shall not exercise any administrative responsibility with respect to the schools or command the service of any school employee. Individual board members shall submit requests for information to the superintendent. Board members shall refer board-related correspondence to the superintendent for forwarding to the board or for placement on the board's agenda as appropriate.
Okay. So,
And thank you to my board members because they were like, wait a minute, I actually went to the superintendent role because I didn't think it was in bylaw. I thought it was actually an administrative.
Yeah, no, it's right there.
okay. So, answer to your question. Thank you for
And
asking.
I'll just go back to, even though it's a bylaw, we know that sometimes people slip out of those appropriate roles. So
Yeah.
it's just that constant monitoring of that and that constant dialogue.
And a commitment. You're
Yeah,
gonna let
and
your
a
staff do its
commitment.
job. And if you feel like you need that information, let her know. Now, only the board can give the superintendent direction. So are you empowering this woman to say, they don't want to, everybody needs to make eye contact. Are you empowering the superintendent to say, I'm starting to hear direction from you, Hector. I appreciate it. I hear passion. Let me process with the board president about how to bring this forward for the board. Are you agreeing that you empower her to say that to you if she starts to hear specific direction from a single trustee?
Yes, and she's done it.
And she's done it?
But yes.
Is that why the
We're gonna
buses are at
empower her.
Valerie's? Okay. Any question on that, Brenda? I'm sorry, you know what, we can't see you until you're up, and so I want to make sure that, did you have any question on that? You're muted, darling.
Okay.
There you go.
Question on what?
Just the notion that if your superintendent is starting to hear direction from an individual board member, like putting them to work, gather this report, do the following, she'd say, I'm starting to hear direction and I really need to process that with the board president so I can bring it forward to the full body for discussion. That's usually not an answer to a question or some more specificity around something, but it's like, you know, I want a full analysis of the DF list and I'd like to know blah, blah, blah. And she's saying, ooh, I hear about 40 days of work there, I need to talk to someone. So that's just, the agreement is, Brenda, that we empower the superintendent to say to you as individuals, I'm starting to hear direction, let me process this with the board.
Yeah,
Okay,
that sounds good.
groovy.
But I do have a question about the 9,200 board policy that Lorraine read. I mean, let me give you an example. So, you know, we're spending over $1 million on Project Kinship. So I went and checked out Project Kinship, you know. I wanted to look and see what we're investing in. Did I need to call Lorraine and say, Lorraine, can I go see Project Kinship? I mean, that seems a little strange to me. Like, I don't want my hand to be held. I mean,
Well, that is
I'm an
the,
adult.
that is what's articulated in your bylaws, though. And I think just as a courtesy, you'd say, I want to check this out and I'm going to go. And I imagine your superintendent is going to say, terrific, I'll let them know you're coming.
Right.
I think the feeling here, Brenda, is that people don't want to feel like they want to feel like a team. And so transparency works not only with your community, but with each other. And so if Hector really wants to go check something out, I think maybe the agreement here of the board is you let Lorraine know, let your superintendent know, I really want to check out that program before we vote on it. Is it possible I could see it?
Right.
Maybe that, just that way, which doesn't mean you can't examine it, but you would move through your employee.
Okay.
1, 2. Thank you.
I just have one quick question. I think that it's really important that we continue having this dialogue, not just here, but outside of here. I've been on the board for 9 years, and one of the reasons I keep bringing up policies is because of lawsuits. I was called in as a I was calling to witnesses for a couple of lawsuits, and I'm thinking, why the hell are they calling me? I didn't do anything. It was this other board member that did this, And the thing is, if one board member violates a policy that leads to a lawsuit, all of us are going to come in. I don't want any of you to go through an investigation, through a lawsuit. That's a really traumatic event. I'm fortunate enough that it's never been deposed through the whole 8 hours, but that's really traumatic. But the bottom line is, everything is in the policies. If we follow the policies, we stay out of lawsuits, we stay out of investigations. And it's not just the policy, but the policies were written to reflect laws and regulations. But not only that, but the thing is, we have a contract with her. Her contract says she's responsible for day-to-day operations. And that's why we have that policy, to indicate that we have to go through her.
That's right.
And they are there to protect you. You're exactly right, Alfonso. And we want to protect our board members.
And if the policy isn't working for you, then discuss the policy. But you don't just go around it. That is 100% correct. Valerie?
Yeah, and I think in regards to our staff, at any school site or any community partner, just letting them know through our superintendent's office is that we're showing up, and that courtesy is just so they can be prepared as well, right? Sometimes they're having big events, they're having staff meetings, they're having IEPs that they can't just turn around and, come do a site visit with us.
So that brings us
And
to
when
another
you show
area.
up, everybody drops the mic, drops
Exactly.
everything. You are in charge, and people will drop. I felt that way as a principal. So that's a great point,
You know what,
Valerie.
honestly, looking back on being on a board, if I could do one thing over, honestly, one thing over again, one do-over, I would not underestimate your presence.
That's right,
And you are, I don't care how many times you say it's my opinion, they hear the board, they hear movement. All I said was, I just want to work in my daughter's classroom, and the superintendent said, I can't tell you no, but I'm like, all right, I'll go stack books in the library. But, so, visiting schools is on this list, and not necessarily in your bylaws, but is there an agreement that if you want to visit a school, what is your protocol around that, Lorraine?
So our protocol is for a board member to email, communicate, text, however that might work out best. Both myself and Karina, who is sitting over in the wing over there, but she is.
Wingman.
Yes, she is the wing woman, and super important. She is the person who coordinates
Okay.
all visits, and she will communicate with the
Bless you.
school. Bless you. And honestly, the team does a very good job of that.
Okay, great.
So,
But let's memorialize it.
Yes,
Because
we
if your
definitely-
behavior is good, we want to get that down.
As
and to
Alfonso
Alfonso's point about
Exactly.
these are the board members that are sitting here today.
Right.
But we want to really codify, and the superintendent sitting here today, we
Right.
want to codify good, solid practice so that our district can continue to, really
Okay.
be in a good place with regards to all
You want
these
to
things.
remember that a commitment here, I'm looking for consensus, you will email or text and say, I plan to visit. I'm looking for everyone to agree. If they get back to you and say, could we pick another day, they're in testing, that's just really not optimal, that we're not going to be bruised about it, of course. Operational efficiency is something I read clearly. That you agree to observe all the safety protocols, sign in and signage and model. There's agreement on that. I see nods. I'm looking for nods, right? And so I see, I thought Brenda was going like this, but it's a necklace. It's a necklace. So I'm like, okay, I'll stop. And this is also very important, no evaluative comments,
Right,
right?
very. One
Talk
way
about
or the other.
talk about lawsuits, right? So it makes it all the way up to, but a board member said this, and you're like, to the principal says, terrific, she never does any of her adjunct duties, I'm writing her up, and I got this problem, and, so, yes, okay, we'll put that in your handbook. I want to talk with you about the use of electronic communication and how superintendent wanted to talk with you about this, how we respond to the public when you're receiving email as a board member, an individual board member, the board as a whole. How do we get back to members of the public when they express a concern? What are your current practices and are they working for you?
To this end, I think there is not as much uniformity. I'll just
Okay.
say that. And I don't know if it's what each individual board member is doing works for them. But in talking with each of them, there is a,
Wide variety of approaches or just?
I wouldn't say a wide variety, but some variety in approaches.
Okay. Let's talk about,
Yeah.
you know, you want to be responsive. First thing, everyone commits to clarifying when you're offering your own point of view versus the board's point of view. A friendly reminder that you should not tell someone how you're going to vote, because you should not make up your mind on how you're going to vote until you hear from the last speaker. It could be a student who stands before you and says something, and you think, by gum, I didn't even consider that. So you could say, I'm favorably disposed to, I'm leaning toward, I like the idea of, I continue to do my homework. But as fiduciaries, you really have an obligation to make up your mind after you've heard all the information. But when people email you and ask you what you think, you could say, right now, I'm studying it. Seems like an interesting idea. Haven't made up my mind. What would you like to share with me? That's really more about you listening then. They might try to corner you, but that's really more about you listening to what they have to say. If there's an email to the full board that's a concern or a criticism or a complaint, you really should be directing that to your superintendent for response, because, you know, it could move into a personnel thing or a student thing. So what is the practice right now if something comes to the board expressing a deep concern about something? How do you handle that as a
Let's
board?
start with if it comes to all of you. You all get the same email.
Thank you, thank you.
I can kind of kick us off here. So definitely if if the email includes all of us, I know for myself, you know, protocol, because we have to be careful of the Brown Act, or mindful and stay within it. So I will just reply to the individual, the superintendent and her staff, so Ms. Quiros and Ms. Rosales, typically. And then I will share that I'm looping in the superintendent's office, superintendent and her team, so that they can further reply. Respond. Mhm.
Okay,
And I will share that I have in the past and at times, out of consideration to the person wanting to give some level of acknowledgement. But I will, to your point, it can get very tricky because it can be interpreted as I'm saying, you know, saying one thing or another, or the next steps are this. And so I have seen that. And so for the public and community to hear this conversation too, if, you know, it sounds like we're keeping it very brief.
Right.
It's not for a lack of care, but it's that through writing, through email, things can get misinterpreted. And again, our responsibility is to uphold, you know, the policies and, you know, the best interest of the district, right? We don't want to put ourselves or anyone in a state of confusion. So that's where I've landed.
I would just want to hear from everybody. I do want to say that it is perfectly fine to say I hear concern in your voice, and I forwarded this to the superintendent for prompt response. That's an agreement of the Board of Education, and we can engage in a dialogue here, but I do know you'll hear from the superintendent in short order. So just something kind and not lawyerish, like pursuant to Ed Code 6.934, where like, I'm like, what does that mean? And like, who starts with pursuant to? So, you know, I used to look people in the eye and say, I hear great concern in your voice. You really need to go speak with the teacher. I don't want to. Then you need to go to the principal. I don't want to. I want you to handle it. Well, I'm not going to. And all of you said, so we're going to come back to that one, because all of you said in your own way, I want the public to better understand what our role is and that we don't fix problems, and we're going to talk about that. But let's go back to email. It comes to the full board. And want to hear from everybody on how you currently handle that.
If an email comes to the full board, I'll just check in with Dr. Perez and, hey, can you please follow up with this? If it's an email that comes specifically to me, I'll just say, thank you for your email. This has been forwarded to the superintendent's office. My first year on the board, I learned not to give public opinions. I was out there and I said, this is my personal opinion. It's not a board opinion. And next thing you know, staff are going around saying that I said that there was going to be no reduction of force and all
Yeah.
these things,
Yeah.
And so my approach now is, I actually had a conversation with Dr. Perez, I think Thursday, where I went to a school and I got hit up by teachers and students, and my response was just, my response was just, that is a day-to-day issue, not a policy issue. I have confidence that the superintendent's taking care of it. I assure you that somebody's taking a look at it. And then right immediately, or later, I call Dr. Perez, because the first thing that's gonna happen, there's no secrets here. Somebody's gonna say, oh yeah, I spoke to this board member and this is what they said. Even if I don't say anything, they're still gonna,
Yes, yeah. His silence indicated full support. So I heard a couple things in that. If it's just to you, first of all, you don't know that it's just to you. So it's a really good idea that, because other people can be blind, copied in there, but it's a good idea to just say, I have forwarded it to the superintendent for attention. If it's the full board, the board president can do that, forward it to the superintendent. If it's the full board and the superintendent, you see her on there, then Dr. Perez can get back to you and say, it is a matter of protocol that I respond on behalf of the Board of Education, and they can't engage in a conversation in this format, and then she will handle it as she sees fit.
Yeah, I can go next. Similar to my colleagues, if we get an email, I obviously don't put reply all. I
Excellent.
forward it to our superintendent and let them know that that's what I've done, and depending on the issue, I reply back to the individual, or I just wait for the superintendent to handle it. But I
Okay.
make sure to write it down on my notes as a follow-up item.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good. Anything else here, Hector? Are you comfortable with all that?
Yes, just similarly, and I think the other thing that I'll add is oftentimes, I'll forward that email to the superintendent, but also ask the superintendent to give me an update on what was communicated to that individual, because oftentimes,
You'll bump into them.
I'll bump into them, right?
Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
I get a follow-up email a week later, and they're not happy with what the superintendent said, or, they didn't feel like they were, they didn't get a response quick enough, right? And so, it's always good for me to also know what the superintendent, what information they were sharing with that individual. So that's always something that I ask of, and appreciative that, the superintendent and her team are able to do that for me.
Brenda? Anything you want to add to that, Brenda?
I do the same thing,
Thank you.
just what they said.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just remember, everything you put in an email is subject to public record, and it can just be misunderstood. People really need to know we've got their back. We advocate for their point of view. Good practice, really, honestly, that we discussed what do we do to help people understand our role, which isn't to fix problems. It is your role to fix problems by having the right policy and process in place for issues and concerns and ideas to be brought forward. You need to be really confident that you have processes in place for that. That's our job. We are not the 800 number. So when people stop us, and they'll be teary-eyed over their children, or a teacher's gonna be riffed or something, you look them in the eye, you find your own language, your own voice to say, I hear great concern in your voice. Bless your heart. I know you want to know what happened at the high school. I'm not going to talk about the kids who were involved. You can pinch me as hard as you want, and I'm not going to talk about him. And if it were your child, I wouldn't talk about him either, right? Or whatever you say, or that I hear concern in your voice. I think this board needs to commit with a new superintendent that you will move voices of concern closest to that point of concern. The teacher has a right to know that you're not going to go solve this problem, that you're going to send them to the teacher. And if they say no, then you say you need to speak with the principal. I don't want to do that. I promise you, the surest way to handle this is for you to speak with the principal. What if I don't, A, get the answer I like? What if they don't respond to me? I don't feel like they're responsive. Then what do you want them to do with that, Dr. Perez? When I would hear repeatedly, so-and-so just doesn't get back to us, what do you want me to say to that person? And I know you want me to tell you that too. How do I finish that sentence?
Yeah, so I do want to know in those instances, I agree that we do want things to be, I'm gonna say, addressed at the most local level. So if it's a classroom issue, that we are asking and encouraging our families to work with that classroom teacher. The reality is, and this is actually what I do share oftentimes when I do have the opportunity to meet with parents, I let them know that we're gonna work through this, but I need to help reestablish that relationship with your principal. Because they are the person, like, you drop your kid off at that school every day, I want you to have confidence, I want you to feel comfortable with that leader. So that is my role, you know, in that moment. I mean, I you know, obviously want for it to be addressed at the most local level, but sometimes they're not gonna be. And in that instance, I do want for the board to, you know, as many times they do, share that with me, and we will get the appropriate staff. The way we're structured now, we have evaluators, and so it would not be me who was addressing that. I would share that information with the school's evaluator. I expect that that evaluator is in the know and the nuanced pieces around things that are happening on that campus, so likely it's not the first time they're aware of a concern if it's with a student or
Specific
parent.
question, I've said, please speak with your child's teacher, third grader. I have, not working, don't like it. And, okay, then you need to speak with the principal. Doesn't get back to me. I've called 3 times in the last 5 minutes. No, I'm just kidding, I'm being cheeky. I've called 3 times, they don't get back to me. I, as a trustee, you want me to say, then I suggest you call, because you don't want me to say, I'll tell the superintendent, because now they've gone straight to the top.
Exactly.
So how do you want them to say, what?
Yes, so all of those calls would go to our teaching and learning department.
Okay.
That is where they
Please
go.
contact the someone in the teaching and learning
Yes.
department, okay?
I mean, and, you know, soft
Okay.
handoff would be giving them that information, but yes, they
Okay.
all go through, and we have a log, and keep
Okay.
track of, so that if I'm out and about and a parent says, you know, oh, I called and, you know, didn't hear back, we actually have a log, and I can look, okay, you know what, here's where we are.
Okay.
Because that does happen.
It does happen.
It can happen, it can absolutely happen, and it's not like, you know, our principals are, you know, playing tiddlywinks. I mean, you know, bless their hearts. So, is everyone comfortable with that and clear on that? We really don't want people to feel like the public will never completely understand that you don't solve their problems. They know you through church, they know you through soccer, they know you. Even if I didn't vote for you, I know you, I trust you, will you just fix it? Just take it to the right person, because I don't know who they are, right? That's where you want to say, you would need to trust me, that you need to access the right person in the organization to address this problem. Now, I see your finger, I want to ask you a question before we lose that. Are you comfortable with the trustees saying, if you don't hear from them, you can let me know?
100%.
Okay, now they're gonna say, Alfonso, it's been a week, I haven't heard from anybody, and you can say, thank you for letting me know, you will be getting a call. Right?
That
Okay.
gives me
Okay.
an
Brain
indication
wants to
of
know
my,
that. Okay.
the systems we have,
Okay.
if they're working or they're not working.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
100%.
But guide them, instruct them, educate them. We don't know this as parents, right? So say, you know what, I promise you the principal isn't just sitting there watching I Love Lucy reruns. Like, give them 24 hours to get back to you, right? But, you know, so you don't, because it's the little darling, and they want to call right away. So you need to manage their expectations, that your staff will appreciate that. Valerie, you had your hand
Yeah,
up.
really quick, back to the email communications. I had a clarifying question. Let's say a board member does, we get an email from a community partner, an individual, and it goes to all of the board members, and a board member puts reply all, or if a board member sends the rest of us an email, is that a Brown Act violation?
Depends what the email says.
It depends on what was said to you and what your response
Yeah.
is to them. But if your response is, thank you for reaching out, I'm confident the superintendent will be in touch with you, it's not a problem. It's just that I don't need to hear that necessarily from 5 people. If you say, this has been an ongoing issue and I'm gonna ask for it to be on the agenda, that could be, challenging.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
The other thing I always like to say on this, especially with newer board members, is that what you don't want to do is get embroiled in a situation, and Alfonso sort of talked about that as well, about these policies are here to protect you. Because to Alfonso's point, a problem or concern could be something that ends up in litigation. And now if you've engaged yourself in a situation, student discipline is a really good example. You get too involved at this level, and now it comes to the board for a hearing. You have to recuse yourself because you're already way too involved. And there are many situations like that where the board can get too involved and you don't get to fulfill your role as the adjudicating body.
And that's not
so-
just email. That's
Right.
somebody saying, can I talk to you? Please just
Can
give
you
me a
come to our
minute."
meeting? We're gonna have
I
a little
just need,
meeting.
right, or I need to tell you what happened in this situation. He hit her, she this, that, and whatever, and you're listening because you think it's the kind thing to do, and it's kind of calm it down a little bit, because somebody's emotional about their job or their children, they're only turning to you for help, right? But here's the thing, I've been in situations where 4 of 5 board members had to recuse themselves in closed session because they were in too deep.
Right.
And
Were you gonna say
you
something,
are,
Lorraine?
you are the legislative body, policy, you are the judicial body, and you're the
Appellate
appeals,
body, right.
appellate. And so you need, when people are complaining about one another as employees or whatever, you need to say, you need to trust me.
That's right.
You need to take this to somebody at the district office. You do not want to be if it's serious, and it sounds like it's serious to you, you need to go speak with the proper person.
That's right.
For the sake of you being able to do your job in closed session. And that happens a lot with employees.
Thank you
Lorraine,
for
ma'am.
addressing that. I
Ma'am.
actually, that's what I was gonna ask, if you could circle to the staff,
Yes.
which you guys
Piece.
did. Because that is, just with,
Happens.
yeah, it
right?
just happens.
Yeah.
And I do see Brenda's hand, but I wanted to make sure that we talked about the staff piece in particular. And you mentioned something, Sandy, around, can you come to this meeting? Can we, from your experience, can you just explore that a little bit more? Because I want for people to make connections with maybe some experiences that they've had,
Right.
where people have invited them to certain things, and again, trying to serve, have maybe done that, and just kind of what the implications could be.
Right. And you get invited to everything, right? So I think that's one of the things. So I would always.
Rats, I wasn't.
Always ask the board to think about what the end result of that situation might be. And we don't want to be always thinking about, the litigious outcome, but the reality is districts spend a lot of money on litigation because we do get ourselves involved in lawsuits for a whole host of reasons. And so to your point, if there is, let's just say, a concern about a staff member, and so you've got other staff members that are meeting, we'll keep it in the staff realm. And we want you to come to our meeting and hear our complaints against this person. Now, if that becomes some sort of a filing against that person, remember, you are the judicial body, you're the adjudicating body, and then you are also the appellate body. You have compromised your ability to serve in the real function that you're elected for, so that if there is a disciplinary action, you may need to take action. If there is an appeal to that action, you need to be able to play that appellate role. And if there's litigation and you are involved in that, then now you have changed the landscape for the district and what the district's able to cover. So it's complicated,
Yeah.
and it's a really hard place, I think, for board members who care about their communities and their staff, and they want to be involved, and they want to be engaged, and yet you are elected to fill a very specific role.
And grow comfortable explaining in your own words. Please understand, as part of the
Yes.
body, the board, people don't understand the body part, but as part of the board, our job is to make sure through policy there's a place for you to raise your concern. I'm confident there is.
Right.
Now, walking away from this being new, not new, thank you for all your service. ask yourself, not necessarily for right now, but next time you're with the superintendent, are you comfortable where employees take their concerns? What does that
Right,
process
what's
look
that
like?
look
Do you,
like?
can you explain the uniform complaint process? Do you know where to send people for that? If you don't, familiarize yourself with it, because when they call you, we are not the 800 number. You are doing your job if you have created clear systems, and if you're asking your superintendent, do they work? Do they work? Because too many of these things are bubbling up.
Right.
Why are these things bubbling
Right,
up, Sandy?
that's what you're looking for. What are the systems issues?
Right, what are the
Right.
systems issues, so she can adjust it, and you spoke to that. I think
Brenda,
Brenda had her
but
hand up.
right before, Carolyn is masterful, I think, at
Let's just stop
having.
there.
Okay. At that empathetic phrase, though, that helps people understand, and so I think the challenge, you don't want to say, well, I'm part of the appellate body, but it is that notion of, I know you want me to be able to be where I should be should this go further. I can assure you, we're gonna work with the superintendent to monitor this as it goes through our system. And I want to be able to fulfill my role should this come before the board. Because they do want, that's why they're coming to you. They want you to play a role in it. You just sometimes have to remind folks that you actually have a legal role and you wanna be able to
Or they
fulfill
don't
that.
understand the process.
Right.
They just don't. You know what I mean? If I don't have any complaints, I see Brenda's hand, they don't have any idea. The teacher's really crummy to their kid. They can't get the principal on the phone, but they know you. You know what? You just really guide them, really guide. I assure you, X, Y, and Z. There are a couple of things. I want to go to you, Brenda. I see your hand. I just want to make sure you know. This is super important for you to make sure your community members know that you hear them.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, I hear great concern in your voice. And I love you for that. I really do. Or in a meeting that's packed, you're here because you care.
That's right.
You're here because you care, and we thank you for that. We don't want you to be mad at us that we're upset about something, but we don't know where to take it, and we need your guidance there. And I will tell you this, when people always want to know with student and discipline, who did what to whom, and what are you doing about it? Are they going to be shot into geosynchronous orbit tomorrow? Because I don't want them back on campus with my kid. And grow really comfortable saying, you know what? I don't discuss students publicly.
That's right.
And this would not be a healthy organization if that's how we dealt with students and discipline matters. All students are our students. It's being handled by the right people who are talking to the right people. And I'm not going to talk about those kids. And I'd say the same thing about employees.
Absolutely.
What kind of employer would we be if I stood here and spoke with you
How
about?
would you feel if your employer?
Right, and so, no, there's a process, and just when you help, because every one of you asked me in your own way, how do we help people understand what we do and what we don't do? Poof, not gonna happen. But how you handle those moments will help a lot.
It's constant education.
And Brenda has her hand up. Two hands and a foot.
Oh, I do?
Go
I have
for
two
it.
hands up?
No, I'm just teasing you. I'm
needed it.
teasing you. Brenda, you keep adjusting your necklace, and Sandy and I think you're saying, cut.
Okay.
That's funny. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not really. Go
No,
on.
I mean, I'm thinking about a lot of things, because, first of all, I mean, I like how you said to inform people of the process, because a lot of people don't know the process. And I do feel that as board members, that's a place that we have, that we can help. Okay, well, this is what you do when these kind of things happen, kind of read it to them. This is the system.
Right.
Because
Right.
they don't know the system.
That's right.
And even a lot of employees don't.
That's
And,
right.
I just had a friend call me recently, and, because I worked in the district for 10 years, I have a lot of friends in the district.
Yeah.
And they told me something, and I said, well, listen, you have to maybe reach out for, like, I broke my toe at work before, and I didn't know, and I actually went to my own doctor and found out I shouldn't have done that. I was supposed to fill out a form, and I was supposed to go to the district doctor, and, a lot of times teachers and employees don't know these things.
No.
And sometimes, unfortunately, it seems like maybe we need to get some of this basic information out to people on the process, so it's not so mysterious sometimes. Like,
And
what is
that's,
a uniform complaint?
yeah,
And when
that's,
do we use
Yep.
a uniform
and
complaint?
that's something we can do. I'm going to send you some examples, Dr. Perez. There's some really great examples out there that are on websites and are distributed at school sites and orientations.
We've seen some
and
really
whatnot
good ones on
that are just
websites
like
that are just really good
questions,
flow map. of
concerns, where
this,
do you
this,
go,
and
like,
this.
et cetera, for families, students, and for employees. And just, you're the last stop on the train. You are the last stop, but you're the first stop if you're serving donuts after 10:30 mass. I speak from experience. And so you just, that's it. Just remember this. Go to sleep with this. Hold on to it. You are doing your job as a government body if you have processes in place for employees to address concerns, ideas. Ideas, we want
Right.
ideas. Parents to address concerns, ideas. They come forward and they have a big idea. Do you say, you should take that to your site council? That's our job. Familiarize yourself with that system.
And I would just
sup-
say too, to what Brenda
super
said
good.
about them not knowing the processes, that's absolutely
don't.
true. And the way they do learn it, though, is by hearing the same thing from different trustees over and over again. Having that unanimity, having the agreements that this is how we're gonna communicate, this is how we're gonna proceed, because then I start to trust the system. But if I get different answers from different people, that feels like the system, there's something wrong with the system.
Well,
And now I
I'm just
don't
gonna,
trust
I'm
it.
gonna say it as a former trustee, I'm just gonna lay it bare. The gamesmanship of, I'll get you what you want. You call Terrell, she's the board member who takes care of it,
Right,
like,
yeah.
bad form.
Yeah.
You are a body, only the body has authority, have each other's back. You
Right.
know, I spoke with Hector, he did nothing about it. I know him. I doubt that. He would never. Anyway, love it. But no,
Right.
I doubt it, because Hector understands you need, right? And so I think that's, and then your superintendent has confidence when her principals say that they're being invited into these meetings, and she's gonna say, they're not gonna go. They're gonna say, there's a process for you to share
That's
your
right.
voice. And you can always say, if you feel you need to email the board, our email addresses are online. Right? So when you do get email as a board, prior to a board meeting or at a board meeting, do you share publicly that we have received 30 letters, 10 in support of X, 5 in support of, that has become more of a practice? You might just want to watch a couple districts and see if that's something
If
you
you're
wanna do.
getting a lot of written,
Oh, and not
Yeah.
only that, but to help people understand that is a way to communicate
Yep.
with you. You hear it, they don't necessarily have to get a babysitter. Make the Chumash Village with 2 corn tortillas, 4 felt markers, and a Q-tip. That 4th grade project that I loved so much, right? Cram a grilled cheese in their mouth and then head out the door to the board meeting to make a point. I can email you, and I have confidence you're all gonna read it. So there are boards that are saying
Yep.
we've received 35 letters, 10 in support of teachers' salaries, 5 concerned about X, Y, and
Whatever.
Z, 3 like my new haircut. I'm kidding, I just said that for fun. And then, keeping it light. And then you move on. You don't say the names, you don't say anything, and you can just, the
Right.
board president can say, I assure you, we read all of the email that we receive. And in advance of the board meeting, if we received it 24 hours before the board meeting, we commit that and that's something else boards are committing to, because it's liberating families to find another way to be in touch with you and not have to come to a meeting. I would encourage you to consider
and that just
looking at
requires,
that.
though, consolidating those, because what you don't want to have happen is
Right.
each individual board member now reporting out what they heard from, then that becomes a whole thing. So
No,
you have to have a process again
It's
for.
super tidy.
Yeah.
The Livermore District does a really nice job with that. You see it at the top of the meeting. It's really crisp. Yes.
And I think for that, it would be great to streamline it to one email, and maybe we can put it on the agenda so folks know, aside from a public comment and the
You have
direction
this-
of
yes,
it,
exactly
you can
right.
also do a email
Yes.
comment,
Yeah.
and then you said 72 hours before?
It was, actually, it can be whatever you
Whatever,
choose. Whatever you
yeah,
choose,
whatever you can
memorialize, and then
manage, yeah.
stick with it,
But I
right?
think
If-
that's a good time,
But
right?
yes, exactly.
Create a time period for when folks can submit their emails, so then we can say, we got this amount for this agenda item.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're confident, it's just another way to
It's
be
another way.
accessible. It really is a
And
nice.
some people would really prefer that over having to come up and stand in front of you for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially those who, yes, go ahead.
Carolyn, I did want to ask, going back to the part about kind of redirecting inquiries that we receive when we're out, say we're at school sites, or like you mentioned, we know personally employee or a family. And when they share that they have a concern about how something's kind of like systems that are in place on their campus, or they're asking like, hey, I'm looking for clarification. Are you aware as a board member, I don't think this makes sense. And this has been a point of difficulty in my role. Since you're here, like, I wanted to put that on your radar. Is there anything, is that supposed to be the way that things are implemented at the site level? Or is there anything that we can do about that? So what I'm hearing is we will refer them, usually I refer them to the superintendent, but what I often will say is, I will connect with the superintendent and is it okay with you if I share that? Or are you okay with me forwarding, if you want to put that in email and I can forward it, however you want to go about it. But I do find it helpful to have that context. And I do follow up with the superintendent and ask, is this, our direction, or is this maybe something that's of concern? At the same time, I also hear the point of if our systems are working and it can be addressed,
You want it to be,
then
right.
we don't necessarily need to get into the weeds on everything. It kind of depends. I mean, some things are bigger structural things that we've, as a board, have given direction on, right? So we want to know, like, hey, this is a very high importance service to our students. I want to know, I want to make sure I'm also aware of how we're implementing this.
So it's a massive umbrella under
Yeah, I
which
know.
a lot of things fit. So
Yes.
if somebody comes up to you, student, staff, or a family member at a school site and wants to talk about something going on at that school site, I'd say it sounds like, that's something you ought to bring up with the principal, and I would just move them to the site. And that's if it's something that belongs with the principal, like kids don't have enough time on the handball court, or we don't have enough time for lunch, or what have you. You're gonna know if it's in your subject matter jurisdiction. If they wanna talk to you about, as a teacher, so I don't like the committee's work on report cards. I think it stinks to high heaven. I don't like what I'm seeing, and the board has said, we want a committee to look at a standards-based report card, and that's direction you've given. My suggestion is, and I'm sitting here with two superintendents who are waiting to see what I say. I would say that there's a committee looking at it, and you should make sure that they know your concerns. They're studying it right now. The superintendent has a task force, or has, her ed services team, or whatever, they're looking at it, that you need to make sure, no, you tell them, I don't like whatever, no. There's a process here, and I'm not gonna circumvent it out of respect for process. And if you were on that committee, I'd offer you the same deference. So that Ed Services is looking at the report card. We did ask for a standards-based report card. Sounds like you're unhappy with the process. You really need to let them know what you want to see. When I meet with you, I would tell you, I'm hearing people
Yes,
grumble about the
right.
report card,
Yep.
FYI.
FYI.
And I don't think I'd put it in an email, because it's going to be subject to a public records request. And I'm not saying that you don't want to hide from the work you need to do. I just would make sure your email always works for you. So if you're going to put that in an email, I would say, while visiting a school site, they expressed some concerns. I'm grateful that they feel some ownership over this. I'm handing it to you. That's all
Yeah.
but you don't want to say the stinking lady who wears the muumuu came up to me and chewed my ear off and whatever, then, listen, I work for a law firm. You wouldn't believe what we see. So I see the woman who's, bless her, that sign, or she's trying to figure out how to sign all the stupid things I'm saying. See her?
Just now.
She's moving fast, God bless her. So anyway,
But honestly,
but it's a huge umbrella. If it's in your jurisdiction, handle it with your judgment, and then move it to who it belongs to.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is that discernment on the part of board members, right? To, say, okay, this is something, I know where to park this. This is the first time hearing of that. Thanks for sharing with me. But not promising. I'm going to get the superintendent to look right into that. But thank you for, that's really interesting information. I will certainly, if you feel like saying you're going to share it. But just, you can also just receive information without having any indication of what you're going to do with it. I do think always letting me as the superintendent, letting Lorraine know is huge, because we are hearing from so many different places, and we can't put those themes together if we aren't hearing from different folks. I think the challenge is, as a superintendent, having had 7 board members at one time, when they're all out and they've got a list, and you're coming and saying, I've got some concerns about the kind of gravel we're using on the playground, and then, we move through, textbooks didn't get to the campuses, I'm hearing until 3 days later than they were, and now I've got this laundry list of stuff, all of it not as important as, equally important, and so then trying to, I think you're gonna want me to resolve that or get feedback back to you. So your discernment around, is this a systems piece, is there a policy here? Is this something you're hearing repeatedly? Because I want to know that for my board members. Okay, Hector has heard this 3 times. That's something I need to check into. So figuring out that, and that's, the rhythm that you get into, especially the more experienced,
Right.
I'm sure,
Right.
after 9 years, you have more of a rhythm of the things that you're going to attend to and the things that, they're not hot potatoes. And some things you're just going to say, and you said this well, and I love that when a board member would say, just FYI. Couple of things I heard when I was out visiting schools this week.
Yeah.
Because not all things are things that you need to resolve, but your superintendent is the funnel. And so those things coming in so that she can make those connections and then determine who amongst her staff needs to be, worked with to make sure that things are getting done at a
And,
systemic
and
level.
do not tell your staff what to do about it.
Right.
I see buses speeding down Lindero Canyon every day at pickup. I'm parked there as a mom picking up my child, I see buses. I want that bus driver fired. No, just FYI. Just FYI, I've seen it now 5 days in a row. And I mean, like,
That happens.
driving fast down a residential road. So fine, hand it to her, let her handle it. Couple of
True
things that are
story,
super
I was
important.
doing a rural workshop, and
You have the best stories, though.
No, you have the best stories, but sitting at a coffee shop, and some older gentlemen sitting having coffee before I was going in for the meeting, and I could see that they were talking and they were looking at their watches, and this is a true story, looking at their watches, and so finally the bus came by, and so the one guy says, well, I'm gonna be calling the superintendent, that's 10 minutes, and it was exactly that, 10 minutes late, and this can't keep happening, it was like, wow, they're gonna call the superintendent because they noticed. So small communities know everything just as well as your communities know everything. And everybody's trying to figure out how to fix it. And they wanna go through the superintendent or the board member and get it done.
And, you've heard it many different ways. Be accessible.
Yeah,
Be accessible and listen, and help people understand where to take that voice of idea, concern, whatever. That is how you help the public understand both your role and also how to get action for whatever it is that concerns them. I'm going to tackle 2 things that are really important.
can I just say one last thing about this, is that comfortability of
Is
your
this a bus guy?
superintendent. No, done with
Okay.
that. To say to you, Valerie, I hear that, I just want you to know that's probably not anything I'm gonna do anything with right now, because the other
Yeah.
thing sometimes is that we don't leave with clarity, and I want the board members to know.
Yeah.
I'm gathering that information, and if something else happens there, I'm gonna get back to you and let you know what's going on with that. But again, it can be just, 55 things
Excellent
that
point.
now you need to
Yeah.
do after meeting with the board.
Yeah, really good point. Just clarity around, I'm not doing anything with that right now.
Just to let you
so-
know,
or
I've
just
got
let-
it, but I'm not
So,
doing anything.
Couple of
I didn't-
things,
Didn't mean
couple
to
of
pick on
things.
Valerie.
Back to sort of board voice, social media. You do not lose your free speech rights after you're elected. You have a right to your voice. You can express your thoughts on any number of topics. Not that I did. Nobody believes that. But
We often joke about what our relationship as a superintendent and board member would have been.
But I will say, if you're in social media, you want to, and I'm gonna give you language from the lawyer on this, because there's case law on this now. But you wanna separate your board work from your personal life. And you probably don't wanna be inserting one from the other.
That's right.
Keep it clean for your sake. There is language from the lawyers I didn't write it, doesn't begin pursuant to, that will be in your draft handbook, you can take a look at it. But you don't give up your free speech rights. If you want to go to a rally for a particular theme, that is your privilege. What you do have an obligation to do, what your obligation is to the best of your ability, clarify, I am here as an individual. I have individual rights too, and I am here as, you know, Moms Against Guns, or whatever my position might be. But I'm not here as a board member. Now, they don't necessarily believe that, so you need to be really careful with it. I wouldn't wear district signage or school district signage. This is just me as a friendly tip to you, just because you do have a right to exercise your point of view. And you also have an obligation to remember that every one of you is here for those 5 reasons. Set the direction, the superintendent, and evaluate the superintendent. We need to touch on that. A part of the superintendent's evaluation should be your own board self-evaluation. You should be evaluating yourself and asking yourself, what was our role in her success? Where did we possibly impede her success? Every good boss asks, what's their role? I have a template for you to look at. Your board policy does say you'll evaluate yourself every year. So either evaluate yourself every year or take it out and rewrite your policy, and take it seriously, right? And you do not give up your free speech rights. We covered that. I'll get you the social media commentary. I want to make sure that we have covered that. Your board policy does stipulate that you, as a board president, will attend the CSBA governance training. You have a right to leave that in there or just say that you will seek training. You don't have to have that level of specificity in there. I would encourage you as president to read through what is required of the president and ask yourself, do we really do that, or can we be a little more vague about it, if you will? Your budgets might not allow you to go to CSBA one year. You might take advantage of something offered through the county or through LACO or through the Council of Governments. I used to go to the COG trainings that the city council participated in. So that's something for you to consider. You do remember that you're not supposed to conduct a serial meeting through communication. So if Alfonso bumps into Valerie and starts chatting about something, Valerie might say, I already chatted with Hector. We need to stop. And you'll honor that. You're not going to shut each other down rudely, but you're going to say, ooh, thanks for letting me know. The Brown Act means this. Everybody knows it. Big, long lecture from lawyers. I always delete their 70-slide deck and turn it into one visual that's the sun. That's it. Peter Fagan said, what is this? I'm like, the light of day. That's it. You have to do your work in public. Unless it's confidential in closed session, your discussions, your deliberations, we deserve to hear that. So I want to go back to the board meeting and ask you, are you comfortable with the dialogue you have up there? Do you feel you go down the row, and if Hector was first, then Valerie, then can Hector go again or speak again? Or are you comfortable, you're really like relaxing to a point of saying, all right, I really want to peel this apart. I want to hear how you feel about it, what you're hearing about it. Or is it boom, 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 let's call the vote? And I didn't hear any discussion, any dialogue. Can we talk about that?
Maybe I can kick us off here as well. And then I think Brenda maybe raised her hand as well.
Okay.
I think traditionally, because I've been reflecting on this, right, like stepping into the role of board president just a few months ago. And so since I've been on the board, I've as a board member, I felt our previous board presidents, Mr. Bustos and prior, have done a really great job of creating that space for conversation. It hasn't felt limited. There are times where, of course, they are leading us through the board's agenda, and we'll, share, okay, after a few more comments or last round, I'm gonna proceed to vote or to call the vote. Because in the last year, I would say, especially the last 6 months or so, we've really, one of the themes, reemerging themes, is wanting to get into a better time frame. but we really haven't set ourselves up for that success. And so I think because we're very mindful of the discussion, right? And we have, again, very involved community. We have so many pieces to the work that we're doing. And so it is a challenge to keep it, to end by 10:30. But it is also causing a real situation where it is harder for the staff to have to present at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. But for myself, I'll speak for myself, to process the information and ask the questions that I wanted to ask. So one of the things I've been thinking about is how do we create systems that maybe will help us get to that goal. And so one of the things I know in the last few meetings, I asked folks to stick to maybe 2 rounds. And I tried to front load that so that folks would go into that knowing what is it that I really want to get to? What is the bulk of what I really need to say here, so that we don't run out of time?
Okay.
Because to Brenda's point earlier, we sometimes do run out of time, right, for other things, such as our board comments at the end.
So not everything on the agenda isn't equal in necessarily the amount of time it warrants discussion. So let's be clear about that. So you're going to work on consent agenda. You've agreed to look for themes, things that need to, respectful of a point Brenda made, but treat consent agenda as something that does allow you to move quickly into those items that are on the agenda. There are places where the board's receiving a report, you want to ask questions, maybe have some discussion. There are places where the board's going to give direction, right? First policy read on something, you're going to be looking at cell phones. This is where you need space to talk. I want to make sure that we're very considerate of our students with special needs. I think our parents are going to be very concerned about safety. I'm worried about a policy that's going to be burdensome to our staff. How are they going to do this on top of everything else? I want you to look at that as you're examining policy. Now the policy comes back to you for, not just direction to study it, but a first draft. That's where you're going to have a lot of discussion and deliberation, and you need to leave time for that, and you need to commit to being respectful of one another. And it looks like this. Valerie, I am not hearing anything like that out there when I'm meeting with people and hearing from them, but you delivered that with a lot of conviction. Can you explain more deeply to me what you're hearing? I'm not just there to advocate for what I've heard and my position. You need to hear from everyone. You're all up there bringing voices into the discussion that need to be honored. So, 1, not everything on the agenda warrants a big, long, deep conversation, but those where the superintendent is saying, I really need to hear you discuss, deliberate, and land and give me next steps. That's where you want to make sure, as president, you're saying, I want to move this along now, unless anyone has anything new to add, or, or I remember the one time someone said to me, Carolyn, I was the lone voice on something, kind of a conservative voice on it, and I went at it hard, and the president, Judy, turned to me and she said, Carolyn, there's fire in your belly on this one, and I'm going to give you another shot at the apple here. If you can convince anyone up here, because that's what we're trying to do, get a vote. Right. And I went at it, and they're like, mm-mm. And the question was called, and it passed 4-1. And I left. This is super important for everyone. I see your hand, Brenda. I left able to express confidence in process. Yeah. People said, you were going to get that from me. I said, I never said that. I never said that. I felt that way, and I'm going to tell you, all 4 of my colleagues on the dais heard me. All 4 of them listened to me respectfully, and that's democracy, and we're moving on. Yep. So that is, you're going to need to read and help your board know, this is where I'm going to need really rich discussion from you so the community knows they're heard, and all of your colleagues, all of you need to have an elastic mindset and hear from one another. And I see Brenda's hand.
You are muted. You're muted, Brenda.
Okay. Because I heard I was getting feedback. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So I do have a question. First of all, I mean, I think we're doing pretty good, but it gets confusing. There's two things. One thing is, so we have like a timer that says, you know, you can only speak this long, but then it feels like speeches. It feels like mini speeches rather than a conversation. And maybe, I don't know. I don't know the answer on, I mean, I think the timer is good. I think it's good to have a timer. Because some people are very long-winded and can go on and on and on. And I think it's good to keep it concise. But when you have a question, how do you go back and forth with a timer? It gets confusing. And here's my other question. My other question is, why am I always the one who has to do board comments first? Always.
Okay, well, we'll come to that one next. That was a convenient add-on, Brenda. I'm on to you. I'm on to you. So there may be times when you say, I'm not going to time it, but I want people to please be brief. Let's be productive with one another, right?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do you chunk out the time when you do agenda planning so that you kind of go, you know what, this is going to take us, I'd like to have about 20 minutes here do you chunk it out so you have a sense?
We have a standing like operation of having a time. So every time we get on the speakers list, we all stick to that. And it doesn't mean you can't get back on the speakers list, but it keeps us moving.
Okay. But for like an item, like we are going to talk about putting the buses in front of Hector's
What
house.
I wanted to say about that is that what
Okay.
happens is if, and that's why I was kind of looking at the times, because one point it was 5 minutes each round. Now it's at like 3, and we wanted to do maybe 2 for consent or bring those numbers down to 2. Because by the time, right, like when I stepped into this role, I'm like, oh, wow, you don't really think about it as much until you're in this role. So it's like, okay, if we each have 3, there's 5 of us, that's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Every agenda item that we want to talk one round. 2, that's already 30 minutes. And so definitely glad that this is coming up for discussion.
Well,
Yeah,
I think that you're going to want to look at your agenda, and you don't, like, there's an old adage about board members, I'm sorry I can say it because I'm one of us. It's all been said, it just hasn't been said by everyone. It's really okay to say, I believe it's all been said, and I appreciate the sentiment shared. Wow, you're going to be staff's favorite friend. If that's true, I'm not asking you to invent it, but there are places where we actually have to have dialogue. We have to have discussion, not just hear from each other. I need to know, Hector, I am not hearing that out there. What do you, well, when people are, well, okay, I mean, or who sat on the committee, or I have been in the city board meetings, and the sentiment I'm hearing there, and we're adding it, has it been discussed much at the city board meeting, whatever. There are places where you need to have deliberation and discussion, and I think we're not going to decide it tonight, but as you look at this agenda moving forward, I'd encourage you to less look at time limits and more look at overall commitments that we're going to move through the consent.
And I would
as
say overall,
efficiently as
just thinking
possible.
about a chunk of
Just-
time versus, because what happens is I have 3 minutes, I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is what happens, and I've seen it over and over again. So if you thought about a chunk of time, and the other thing, and this is where the board president is so instrumental in sort of managing that. And I heard, during conversation today, you've talked a little bit about, sometimes we know a lot of stuff already because we've had meetings and we've had that. Sometimes that's what has to be put into this space to help people understand that it's not like we already made our minds up, but you don't really need to rehash it, but just to say, Superintendent, I really appreciate all of the time that we've had to clarify that. I have my questions answered. I know the materials are posted on the website, and I feel really comfortable with where we
Yeah.
are right now. Like, it doesn't have to be a dissertation about it, but to let the public know.
Right, to
there was a
inform the
lot of
public.
other stuff that was happening
This
in
is-
dialogue
Yeah,
that
the
was taking
superintendent
place.
and staff are studying this for 6 months. It's been in and out of committee. It's been whatever. So I don't want anyone here thinking the board's making a rash or quick decision. It's been studied. And so I'm going to call for the question and move it along, so I do think chunks of time versus speaker time might be something you
Just to
want
think about.
lean toward.
So Sandy, to your point, for me, that shapes up like actually agenda setting, not agenda review, which I have talked. like,
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
so we've got into this practice, and our language does mean a lot. We call it agenda review, which implies that it's already done, and I'm just reviewing this with y'all, like.
That's true, yeah.
But it's really about agenda setting and determining those times, which is, first opportunity with our new president, and that's actually what we were making some attempts to do, really be thoughtful about where do these items need to be, how much time gets dedicated, to allow for things, because you're right, not everything needs a conversation, but there are some things that will help our whole organization hear the board talk about those things, and wow, that sends a message, and now we're following that with with the actions to,
Right, that's right, because I thought I saw your hand, because without discussion, just 5 of us going down the row, sharing our point of view, we're not necessarily persuading each other. We should be listening, not to respond. But listen, I have a piece for you on, like the 4 failures of strong leader listening. And the first one is listening to everything with your own response. Yeah, but. We should be listening for where is that like expanding your mind. If you all thought the same way, and if you all heard exactly the same things out there and brought that community voice in here, we wouldn't need all of you. We wouldn't. But you're all bringing in that voice and that discussion and listening to one another. And you can persuade each other. You can say, you know what, I think he's making a point. And I'm going to say I came in with this mindset, but I think we need to expand this a little bit. We need to be more sensitive in that area. And that your public wants to know that. Your staff does want to know that. So I think an agenda setting, planning,
I like that language.
and then I think you're in better shape. I want everyone to feel comfortable being heard up there. Does everyone feel comfortable being heard by your colleagues? Valerie?
Sorry, didn't know there was an actual question. Yeah, I think our discussions go great. When we go over, I think board president, I was gonna say Bustos, Fraser Aceves is learning how to redirect us and coming back to the conversation or to the agenda item. And I understand it's like our first few meetings, but I have noticed she's been getting better at it. So thank you for, learning and adapting and, bringing focus to the agenda items and back to the discussion.
Great, so you're hearing,
that's good.
like, I want to bring this thank you, you have a lot to share. I want to bring it back to the question before the board. Yeah, you need to let her.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Because
How
it
about,
takes a while.
If I can just add to that, I think,
yeah,
and I think, because I wanted to be mindful stepping into this role, right? Because I didn't want it to come off as, oh, okay, now I want to change everything up, right? But it's interesting, and I told Lorraine, and I also told Hector, like, oh, it's funny how, because I'm someone, right, who can, if you give me 3 minutes, I will share about my work in the community, what I've been hearing. And so, yeah, I might struggle in that limit, but so.
You're honest, though, we appreciate that.
Yes, very, to a fault. But you do start and I think because that conversation has been building, like, how can we, even, with that, when President Bustos, was in that role, we were having those conversations. And so for me, it's like a continuance of that. Like, how do we get ourselves set up for success? Because we all want that, but then when you're sitting in that role of president, you don't want anyone to feel like you're trying to limit your team members.
Delicate.
yeah.
And I do think, though, like, at those moments where you've set up 2 rounds, right? And then the first round, everybody agrees. So it sounds like we're in unanimity. If we have any other, I haven't heard any really other points that we need to push on. Does anybody else feel any, right? You get into that role where you can manage that and feel comfortable a little bit better. But I do think the hardest thing that board members have is really having a discussion. And I think, one of the things to think about is with the current structure, maybe it's not as open to dialogue and me saying, well, Valerie, I'd love to hear more about that. You know, could I ask a follow-up question to Valerie? How do you, are you able to do that?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
So I think that this is full honesty. I think that we've come to this type of format because it's been difficult
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
to hold decorum without this type of process. And I'm not saying us,
Yeah,
right? I'm
no, I
saying
get
like
it, yep.
boards in the past, because this process was in place even before the majority of us
Got it.
were on the board, right? And so it was difficult for the board at the time to make sure that there was mutual respect and decorum. And so they moved to this model of limiting everybody to 2-3 minutes per round,
Yep.
right?
That
I
makes
do think that now as a board, even though we don't agree on everything, we do
That's
agree
good.
on a lot, right? We
But
do
it's
agree,
good,
right,
it's
right.
good you don't agree on everything, as long as you listen to each other.
100%. And there has been instances where we've been able to have discussion and a board member has said, hey, I'm walking into discussion. I thought about this topic in one way, but after discussion, I'm on a completely different side and I'm going to support this item, right? That has happened. So we have the capacity to do that and the ability to do that. I think it's just going to take every single one of us making that commitment to respecting one another on the dais, respecting our, different perspectives and views on things, but ultimately like being willing to listen to one another, maintain decorum in this space so we can get business done, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
I think, so I just wanted to provide that background context of why I think we've had this model. And I'm not opposed to moving to another model, but again, it's gonna take commitment from all of us
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
But I really appreciate you shared that. And
Thank
it
you.
also shows that, meeting management evolves over time, right? You have to be able to get the district's work done in your meeting. And so I've been in districts where we've changed things, meeting A, meeting B, different, every other month was slightly different in order to figure out a way to accommodate those times when you are gonna have a lot of discussion or you're gonna have a lot of folks there. So that's a really important historical point. And it may not be something that you wanna change right now, but just being aware of it and thinking about how you're using your time might also, be able to make it more productive.
And thinking about how, I would say, thinking about how you, some of the commitments you've made around very specific things, public comments, consent, and also moving into these agenda items, thinking there are 2 substantial reports on learning tonight, and I want to leave space for the board to have a discussion. So let's go into tonight's meeting, please, with an agreement that we're going to try to really get to the meat of this. And then try it in that space. Because the 3 minutes, and you get the point, we've all discussed it, right? It's not a discussion. And you might very well change my mind.
And one last
know?
idea I'll throw, do you ever use time certain for a discussion? It's a strategy that can help if you have something, let's say you've got a lot of folks here, looks like public comment's gonna go long, or who knows what the agenda looks like, and you've got a meaty topic you want to take apart. We're gonna change math pathways, and there's a lot of emotion around it. So, and there's a lot of moving parts. So what we want to do is say, time certain for that item's 8 o'clock. And so, yeah, then you work through that, and that can also it also connotes to the community, this is really important and this takes the board's full attention. So sometimes using time certain, you can't do it all the time because you can't always adhere to it, but for those things where if we get to this at 10 o'clock, I used to tease my board and say, I don't do my best thinking at midnight. 10 o'clock, you're pushing it. So you do, and there are people like that.
I started daydreaming about the food that was at home because I was starving.
But that's another tool that you can have in your toolkit to make sure you get to an item at a time when everybody's fresh and ready.
I have a template board self-evaluation. It's got your logo on it, but it is a draft. So I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to ask each of you to write draft on it, because if this got out there, it looks formal. I apologize that the water seal's not on it. My suggestion is that you look at it with the superintendent and contemplate an ad hoc committee of the board, which means 2 of you just sitting down, looking at it, tailoring it for you, and then moving it to the full board for discussion. My further suggestion is that you add it to the superintendent's evaluation, because you really should begin by asking what was our role in success or impeding success, because we unintentionally can get in the way. If you're not happy or content or have questions about your own evaluation process, Sandy could process that with you. She's got a lot of material. We just did some great work with Rachel. She might share with you what we've done, but I'm going to share that with all of you. Pass this out. There's the Supreme Court decision on social in here, tip sheets on laws. I work for a law firm, what can I say? And there's a really great piece on listening. It's short, it's just a page and a half, and I think it's a really great piece for I give to everyone, so I'll share these with you. And I brought one for you, Brenda, packet of information, and they'll have it for you, ma'am. I'm going to summarize your agreements into what will look like a draft handbook. Again, an ad hoc committee can take a look at that and see if we captured everything. These are the agreements that translate your bylaws into how do we actually do it, and are we going to live with it, and is it consumer friendly? Is there anything that you wanted to discuss? That I touched on everything that y'all mentioned to me when we chatted, but is there anything else that you want to discuss while we're here? Because you are at time, and I don't want to be disrespectful.
Why so fast?
We're going to have.
Brenda, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I still wanted to find out why I'm always why I always have to give board comments first, and that order never changes. Like to know an answer to that question.
I'm sorry.
And
So it's just the
Hello?
order of the processes, right? We start with board members and then go through the clerk, the vice president, and the president. And so that's the structure that the board has used since I've been on it. And the consistency is helpful, so you can be prepared. So you always know when you're gonna go.
I know, but Alfonso and I are both members. Why do I always go first and not him?
More recently elected. Yeah, the order of election.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seniority.
Okay, and second of all, so I'm just need some clarity, because at our last board meeting, there was an agenda item removed, by Hector Bustos. I don't have a problem with it being removed, but it seemed odd, that he left and then came back and said, we're gonna remove this item, and it got removed. It just didn't seem right. I sent an email to the president and to Dr. Perez about it, asking, and I never got a response. So I would just like to ask, is that protocol?
So Brenda, we had not had a chance because you were traveling, but yes, I wanted to touch
I mean,
base
I
with you
still
on.
check my emails when I'm traveling.
Yeah, most definitely, but I wanted to have a conversation with you. I think there was some confusion about, I will tell you, I don't think, I don't even recall Mr. Bustos leaving the room, but I don't think that had anything to do with him pulling the item. I actually knew that he was gonna pull the item before the board meeting even started. So those two things.
Why wasn't that communicated to us beforehand? Because when items have been pulled in the past, it's come from you, not from a board member in the middle of a meeting.
So
After he leaves the meeting and comes back and says it's something about CSEA.
Yeah, I don't think that him leaving the meeting had anything to do with well, I know that it didn't because he had communicated that to me, that he was gonna be pulling the item. He actually is the person who requested the item go onto the agenda, and the agenda had already been given to the board.
Who is the person who recommended it go on the agenda?
Hector.
Oh, so if you're the person that wants it on the agenda, you have the authority to remove it?
He's the board member who actually emailed and asked that we add that agenda to the, that item to the agenda.
What do our consultants have to say about that?
I can't weigh in on anything other than there's a process for pulling things for the agenda. Anybody can suggest. Typically, you would do it at the start of the meeting, say, we're going to approve the agenda, and I might say, I'd like to suggest that we pull item X, Y, and Z, and the board president would say, fine, I'm suggesting an amended agenda, et cetera. But I think there's maybe more of a private conversation that you need to have. It sounds, Brenda, like you're concerned about maybe not having clarity around not just process, but maybe you have other questions related to this particular topic. But it does give me an opportunity to remind everybody that a best practice, not that this is the current situation, Brenda, Hector, but if you have an issue with a colleague on the board, Valerie, if you wanted to say to me, Carolyn, I love you, but you process out loud, could you please call me and process before the meeting because you're taking too much time? Just do it privately. Just if you have an issue with somebody, I think the way you're managing the meeting is just starting to make me feel like you're getting a little bossy. Do it privately. You don't have to do it up there. Figure it out. Go have a cup of tea. You don't have to fall in love. You don't have to get married. You need to get the work done for the kids. So an agreement, I'm looking for heads and nods, I'm looking for eye contact, not shoelaces, that if you have an issue with somebody, you're gonna say, can you make some time for me and can we work through it?
Yep.
It's exactly what you would ask the kids at school to do. It's exactly what you would ask teachers and principals to do. And so if you think there's something that felt weird, just say, hey, that felt weird. Can we talk about it?
Can I just say something
Well,
to
I
that?
tried.
I wish you would.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely make that commitment and welcome any of my colleagues, if that ever is the case, to please, reach out to me and let's have a discussion. Just in terms of process, I think this is another great opportunity for us to clarify, like, what our process is. This is nothing new in terms of our process. At the beginning of before we even start talking about action items, the process, from the way that I've understood it, is when we get to action items, if there is an item that a board member wants to pull, that is the moment for the board member to request to pull the item, in the same way that the superintendent has the authority to do the same thing. And so that's the process that we followed. I don't know if we've done that since, Brenda and Valerie have joined us on the board, if that's actually been something that we've done, so maybe it's new. And again, this is an opportunity for clarity, but welcome, in the future, I welcome a private discussion to be able to get some clarity, and of course, encourage our superintendent to just also share and provide that clarity with all of us as well.
I'm gonna ask Peter for best practice in that, and then we'll get something back to you with this draft, because
I've seen it done both ways.
I'm
Yeah.
not a lawyer, so I'm not, sometimes it's clear and then I made a mistake, so.
That has been the practice, and I'm trying to think the times, rolling back, times that items were either pulled by the superintendent or by a board member would have been, like, right before we were getting into action.
And I've seen that for time. I've seen that where the board has said, it is now 10 o'clock. Is there something on the agenda that you feel we must address? And then I'm gonna suggest we table the rest of the items to a later meeting. That can happen too, where you said, it's 10 o'clock and I need time with you on reading.
And that we have done, actually,
you
like,
can-
even recently.
So, so it sounds like that's been your practice, and if you question one another about how you pulled something or why you pulled something, you can either ask in that meeting, or you can have a private conversation, say, what was that about? I want to ask you to, I wish you would, and then I want you to complete this for yourself and share with the group.
And
Super quick.
so I wanted to share just to that, for transparency, also for the community, because there have been meetings where a board member may ask the rest of the board a question or kind of defer to us. And there's times where I don't respond. And so because I'm not sure where the question, like if it's a leading question, right? Or maybe we're discussing something, but I'm remembering it differently, and that's kind of more nuanced, and I don't know if I want to get into that in that moment, right? If that's the appropriate space to do that. Same within writing, right? If I feel like it's maybe a leading situation, I'm not, I'm gonna defer to the superintendent or have maybe a phone call. But we have to feel comfortable and have that trust too to be able to do that. And so I don't, part of the conversation earlier was opening up to more dialogue. And I think boards before us got, again, my understanding is it has seemed like there's been a need to just
Tighten
more,
it up.
keep it to your own, your thoughts versus trying to like engage, because sometimes, right, like things can be like, become like, if we have a difference, especially, right, it can, are we really gonna hash that out? Is this really like, and we also do have dialogue at times too, when it has been very helpful. So it just really depends on, and so if I'm sharing that, because if a board member or the community sees that I'm not really responding, it's not because I'm ignoring that person, it's just because I don't think this is going to be productive necessarily.
Well, and productive to the question at hand, right? I mean, you can make your point about something, and then move off in a way that's kind of politicking about something you're more important, you're particularly interested in. Bring it back to the question at hand. Your direction for staff to study the cell phone policy. I'd like to hear your very specific direction to that. And I have heard this board, at least through body language and some verbally, empowering your president to run the meeting. She's got to run the meeting, and that's her job. And throw her a bone, man. It is hard to run the meeting and be in it. It is. It is the biggest relief when you rotate out of that position and you get to be in a meeting again. So I'm gonna ask you to just take a look at this and see which category you think you fit in. We'll give one to Brenda when she returns, and we'll share with her your input, and then I owe you a handbook.
Thank you.
Time certain, we want to.
You're a historian? Oh. She's a bottom line. Next week. As soon as I can turn it out, I'm gonna have to draw from your staff here, but.
Now we know.
You're
where
just
Valerie
ribbing me.
fits.
Okay, we're putting Valerie down as a bottom line gal. And how about you, Hector?
Oh, we're gonna tell
I
you.
know. Whoa. This is not the activity here.
Then does Brenda have it? Or-
She doesn't, but Brenda, they're identifying whether they're data-driven.
Yeah.
You can, sure. Okay,
Oh, okay.
good.
She
Okay.
texted. It was texted to you, Brenda. Do you have the document?
Yes, I saw it.
Okay,
Thank you.
great, thank you. I'm sorry about that, as a human error on my part. Sandy?
I think you know which one I am. Which one? Yeah. And all my personality text, everything I do.
Me too, but mostly this.
Me too. My favorite question. What if? I didn't necessarily do that before.
I would not. Okay, anybody else want to weigh in here? I love that the bottom line gal is just like bottom line. I don't even have to read it. I just know what it means. Give me the bottom line. How much is it going to cost? How much is it going to cost? When will we get results? When do we get the handbook? I'm going home to type. I'll be in the hotel typing for you. How about you, Alfonso? Where do you fit in here?
I think it's a combination of a couple of different ones, data-driven, because I've had a lot of conversations with our superintendent and our research team regarding data. Relationship, I'm a social worker by profession. The key to social work is building relationships. I believe that that's also the key to being a good board member, and visionary, looking at the big picture.
Superintendent.
So, visionary, sometimes I have to ground myself in reality. But yes, very big picture. But relationships are critical and critically important to me. I don't do anything by myself or without, without a million people around me to help, so, yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I also can relate to a few of these. I think definitely relationship. Usually the feedback I get from people that I work with is, even if it's work and I'm, with my supervisor, it's always that I ground everything in relationship, whether it's the folks that we're serving our students or my colleagues. And I also consider myself very analytical, so I'm almost thinking historian. So whatever, experience or knowledge base that I have, so for example, when we're out at the sites or I'm talking with folks, I really value each interaction because I save that data and I pull from it often, or when I'm looking at the agenda, right, or conversations with the superintendent or my colleagues, like those things. And so it's like being able to make decisions based with context is very important to me, and that kind of goes back to the relationships too.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you.
If I had to pick one, it'd definitely be relationship. I genuinely care about the process and who is a part of the solution to addressing issues. And I think that my lived experience ties directly into this because I saw the many ways in which the processes that we had as a school district did not work in the best benefit as myself as a student of the school district, but also of my mother. And so for me, I'm constantly thinking about who is at the table, how are their voices being heard, how are we uplifting people to be part of the decision-making spaces and create those spaces, but then how are we making these processes accessible to everybody? Right?
Accessible,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I comment on mine?
You can, and then we're gonna go to Brenda.
Oh,
You get to be more than one,
yeah.
or a double bottom
No,
line.
yeah, a little bit of the obviously the bottom line went in visionary a little bit, but I think bottom line for me, it's like, when I'm reaching out to folks, when I do school site visits, you hear these issues from teachers, staff, families, and I think where it comes from me, this bottom line thing is, there's an issue, how do we fix it? What is the process in place to make sure this doesn't happen again? And how do we address it immediately, depending on severity of the issue or concern? But that's where my mindset comes, right?
Action.
Exactly.
Yeah, responsive. Yeah, I heard that in you right away with public comment. It's really about being accessible and responsive. Yeah. And I want to hear from Brenda. Just remember, accessible and responsive at your board meeting. The board meeting isn't the only place for them to be in touch with you. You have to get work done. And if we make people think you've got to get to a board meeting to be heard, we're not really being fair to them. That's where we look to what might be off with staff and think, how do we fix the system? When a boardroom is packed, staff is thinking, what's off here? That sometimes the boardroom is packed, legitimately, for sure. But for people to think they have to get to a board meeting to be heard, that's not true of you. That's not true at all. They can email you, you're gonna read it. If you need more information on that, you're gonna ask your superintendent. Drill down here because there's something there. And I think that's where we really, I just think a really well-run board is setting clear direction and staff's marching in that direction. And then your board meetings are really operational. But I hear, the community engagement, just know there are more ways than a board meeting to authentically engage them, comfortably engage them. That might even be you building a plan where your board members go out and we did go with the superintendent and go to meet with the PTAs or meet with the parent leaders and help them understand the role of the board. And so
That might sound familiar to some of you.
We were actually talking about this and,
I just built it with the district. It's a fabulous plan, and they're engaged in it. And Brenda and an evening.
Yes, visionary.
Thank
Um,
you.
Serve as a catalyst for change.
There you go.
There you go.
I want to thank you for participating virtually. It can be very hard. We tried so hard to remember, that you were right there, Brenda, and you just stayed locked and loaded through the whole thing. So as facilitators, you made it very easy, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Just do be mindful, though, when you're adjusting your necklace. You're kind of telling someone, like, get the hook. Yeah, no, that's okay.
Sorry.
It's been a great pleasure to be with all of you. I have a treat for you. I think. I hope. Oh, no. Okay. Did anyone see Home Alone? Remember Home Alone? I have Tic Tacs. Remember? Here, put your little bit out. Remember that scene? I love that scene. Oh, no, Sandy.
I don't know what they are, so I can't help.
You do.
I don't.
Okay, well,
Are they lip balms?
yes.
Oh. Next time. She's just, oh, she does that.
Okay, I
They're
only
the
have
best.
5. So Lorraine, I'm gonna get you more.
Bottom line, I want the blue. They are the best. And we have done that too. We could do that next time, Valerie, but we have done that too, because it's very interesting to think, well, hang on to that. Valerie's rated where she thinks everybody else is. I said, we have done that.
We've done
We could
that.
do that.
Yeah,
next-
I shared with, well, with our cabinet team, and I think I shared with this board, we did a lot of work in my prior district around styles and all of that, and
Yep.
understanding our board, so we knew how to create presentations for them. So I mean, it is our business to
It
really
is,
anticipate
absolutely.
and know each of you and what drives you and what concerns you and what, that
Right.
is our job. I mean, it's my job.
It is.
And then, in turn becomes the staff's job too. But yes, that is, it is important.
We've
Valerie,
done the
like, yeah.
disc with boards, strengths
Yeah,
finders. I mean,
yes.
there's so many different ways, but it's so helpful for a staff to really get into the mind and shoes of a board member and
Yeah.
say, this is how they like information, this is what they need. Because we're asking you to process just buckets
So
and
much,
boatloads
yeah.
of information.
And we live in this world
Right.
every day, all day, and that's what I try to remind the team, like, this isn't our board's primary job.
Right.
You know what I mean, like, education, some people are in education, but not everybody. And so how do we get information that's, not just a soundbite, but you know what I mean, that's deep enough that our board can actually consume it and understand it and digest it, so they can make, good decisions.
It helps to know what your preferences are.
Well, also, you don't need to know everything. You can rely on each other, and
Right.
so Valerie's, bottom line, although she describes that as action-oriented, but, we got to a point where, when I was on a board with a lawyer, a tax attorney, and 2 educators, right? And I really relied on the educators to deep drill on I'm not an educator, and I'm a relationship person and a visionary, right? So they relied, but you can rely on each other, right?
The more interdependent
The
you
more
can
you,
be.
the more you get to know each other.
Well, thank you,
You're an awfully
Carolyn.
nice group.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. And before we adjourn, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you both for coming down and flying down to join us. And thank our superintendent for helping us to find the team to help lead us through this work that we've been looking forward to doing for a while. And thank my colleagues for engaging in the conversation. And I think this is a really great addition to how we run things, transparency, connection with our community, folks, all of us kind of growing together and understanding what each of our roles and capacities are. So thank you, everyone, for engaging in the space. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for all you do for students.
Thank you. And with no further business to come before the board, this meeting is now adjourned. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026 at 6 p.m. Thank you.